Rachel Whipple.
Gary Garrett,
Becky Bogdan.
Craig Christensen.
George Handley,
Travis Hoban.
thank you. And we welcome also Mayor Kafusi, our mayor. Our opening prayer this evening will be offered by Jesse Euler, who is representing the Provo City Housing Authority, after which Councillor Whipple will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful to be gathered here today to discuss business with Provo City Council and its members. We're grateful for their service to the community and for all that they do in representation of this great city. And we're again grateful to thee, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Jesse. First, we'll have recognition of a Provo City employee. This will be presented by our mayor, Mayor Kafusi, and our Director of Human Resources, Daniel Softly.
Right, Chair Garrett and Vice Chair Whipple and members of the Municipal Council. Thank you for the opportunity to recognize an exceptional employee whose dedication, professionalism, and service have made a meaningful and lasting impact on our community. While One Provo is built on the strength of collaboration and teamwork, it's also important to acknowledge the remarkable individuals who consistently go above and beyond in their roles each day. This evening, I am pleased to invite Human Resource Director Daniel Softly to present the September 2025 Employee of the Month Award to an outstanding member of the Human Resources team. Daniel?
If I'm up here, you're up here. Always nice to see you. I am honored to present Tammy Olson as the Employee of the Month. This is a well-earned recognition for one of the most professional and hardest working individuals I know. Tammy started with the city as a part-time office specialist in facilities all the way back in 1989. I am not going to divulge her age, but we are in teenager territory. By early 1990, she had quickly moved into full-time. She had transferred to human resources, and she rose steadily in the department over the next 10 years, gaining responsibility and experience in almost every area of human resources. For most of the employees at that time, and we still have some employees around, Tammy was human resources. Now, in late 2000, Tammy's career with Provo City took a very small detour as she moved across the country for personal reasons. It is quite difficult to replace an employee of Tammy's caliber. I know this personally because I am the guy they hired to replace her. Wow. In that role, I was able to see up close her commitment to excellence and the lasting impact she had on Provo City. I won't tell you how many years it was, but I did hear a lot of, that's not how Tammy did it for quite some time. She left a very strong legacy there. Now, she eventually made her way back to Utah, where she spent over a decade working as a manager at Franklin Covey. And just over 8 years ago, I had the opportunity to bring her back to Provo City. I jumped at that opportunity because we're in the middle of switching our human resource information system. And we were in critical need of someone with Tammy's talents. In fact, she was one of the many things that she's done. She has the honor of implementing 2 software programs in the city. It's one of the things she did originally. And so I absolutely needed her on that project. She absolutely has excelled in her role as our system administrator. She was the functional lead on our successful implementation. She was a key reason why we were under budget by a few $100,000. She keeps the system operating smoothly, and her innovative ideas have continued to help the city save money and improve processes and efficiencies. Her skill in Workday is well known throughout the state. Her expertise is frequently sought out by other agencies who have moved to the same system. She relishes these opportunities because she gets to tell others how well we do things in Provo. Now, I could recite a long list of Tammy's contributions, but it is sufficient to say that there are many. I was contemplating instead how to adequately describe Tammy as an employee, and I remembered a letter of recommendation that Stephen M.R. Covey wrote on her behalf 8 years ago. I have not written a best-selling book, so I'm going to defer to his words. He wrote, "I'm honored to give my highest and most wholehearted recommendation of an extraordinary person and colleague, Tammy Olson. Tammy is a person of the highest character. She has integrity. She is honest. She is dedicated. She is service-oriented to her core, always anticipating needs and responding without being asked. She cares deeply about people, about quality work, about outcomes, and about serving others. That genuine care shows up in everything she does. Tammy is also an extremely hard worker. She is gritty, determined, and makes things happen. She has a rare ability to balance vision and execution, seeing the big picture while also ensuring that every detail is handled with extraordinary accuracy. Her attention to detail is unmatched, yet she never loses sight of the overall goals and outcomes. In terms of competence, Tammy is highly intelligent and capable. She has excellent communication skills, both verbal and written, and she demonstrates sound judgment in every situation. She is exceptionally well organized, thorough, and precise. Her supervisory and management capabilities are equally strong. She leads people with care and generosity while also managing operations with discipline and structure. Our team was better led, better organized, and more successful because of her influence." Well stated. I echo all of those statements and add that she is fiercely loyal to Provo City, employees of Provo City, and the residents of Provo City. Congratulations on a well-deserved recognition.
Oh, that's so awesome. Why don't you have them over in photo with the council? It's important.
This way first, and then, yep.
As indicated on the screen, a required public hearing will be held for certain agenda items prior to council action. After each such item is presented, time to comment will be provided. For items that do not require a public hearing, public comment will still be taken following the presentation. At this time, up to 15 minutes have been set aside for open public comment, which is intended to allow comment on matters that do not appear on the agenda, but are limited to topics regarding municipal business or within council purview. During any public comment period, each speaker will generally be limited to 2 minutes. Due to noticing requirements, no formal action will be taken in this meeting on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Those with comments are invited to approach the podium. If you're viewing via Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature on your computer. Anyone here who would like to make public comment can approach the podium at this time. Begin your comments by stating your name and city of residence.
I have a crazy dream, and that is that, say, 50, 60 years after we're all gone, nobody remembers us. There'll be somebody like me in a wheelchair because of disability they have nothing to do with. We'll be able to go out, let's say, just get a gallon of milk at the store, and be able to go out and not have any barriers to encounter because we took care of it. Now, we've only had 35 years since the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed. And I really think we need to take care of things. For example, the handicap parking spaces at the farmer's market, still not good at all. If you wanted to hear about me from all the possible UTA stops that are not accessible, well, I don't have enough time, not near enough time to tell you what they are. I'll throw a new issue on the table. If I want to go up Canyon Road, there's no sidewalk. Sure, on one side, up to, the one turnoff there before the fire station, but if I want to go up, let's say, into that neighborhood, I have to take some risky choices to get around because the sidewalks are not very good. And in this case, non-existent. Now, I'm kind of tired of not being listened to only because, well, I know I say things that might not be popular. Only one city council member, I can't remember the name, I'm terrible with names, has called me. I hope that whoever is going to be elected in this next election will have the courage to stand up and listen to me. But in the meantime, let's get going. We've only had 35 years since the ADA was passed. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names too. Is it Andrew? Could you remind us
Andrew
of your name and your last name?
Thompson.
Thank you, Andrew Thompson. Is there anyone else who would like to make public comment? If not, we'll move to our next item on the agenda, which is a resolution consenting to board and commission appointments. This will be presented by Mayor Kafusi.
Back. Chair Garrett and Vice Chair Whipple and members of the Municipal Council, I am recommending the following appointments and reappointment to Provo City's boards and commissions as indicated below and submit this for the council's advice and consent. First, we'll start with David Taylor. David brings over 30 years of experience in aviation and airspace operations. He has helped shape policy for the DoD and the FAA and has taught airport planning. He also has a strong understanding of environmental requirements. I am recommending David be appointed to a one-year term on the airport board ending June 30th, 2026. Jared Kobia. Jared is the owner of Pilot Makers and Peak Elevated Aircraft and brings 5 years of aviation experience and 25 years of corporate operations experience, along with strong problem-solving skills and a commitment to both aviation and the Provo community. I am recommending Jared be appointed to a one-year term on the airport board ending June 30th, 2026. Mel Lesberg, I am recommending that Mel be reappointed to a three-year term on the airport board ending June 30th, 2028. Susan Kruger Barber, I am recommending that Susan be reappointed to a four-year term on the Landmarks Commission ending June 30th, 2029. John Lyons. John is a lifelong Provo resident and has executive experience as a founder of a roofing business and former VP of manufacturing at Liberty Safe. He is committed to serving responsibly and supporting Provo's planned growth. I am recommending John be appointed to the Planning Commission for a three-year term ending June 30th, 2028. And that's all I have for tonight.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Any questions for the mayor? Is there any public comment? Are there any residents who would like to offer public comment related to this proposal? If not, we'll close public comment. Any discussion from council members? Councillor Christensen?
Just to say, I think the airport board additions are really, these are qualified people. These are people who've been very involved. And as we all know, there's the Provo Airport is going through a great deal of growth, and I appreciate the good work that's been done by those existing members of the board and the new ones that are being called.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? If not, we'll call for a vote on this resolution. Councillor McKay,
Yes.
Councillor Christensen,
Yes.
Councillor Handley,
Yes.
Councillor Bogdan,
Yes.
Councillor Hoban,
Yes.
Councillor Whipple,
Yes.
and Councillor Garrett, yes. That resolution passes by a vote of 7-0. Next, we have an implied motion on an ordinance amending Provo City Code regarding the area where accessory dwelling units are permitted. This will be presented by one of our city planners, Jessica Donachie.
Thank you. Yes, so this is an application for an ordinance text amendment to add to the property at 3080 North Bannock. There we go. At 3080 North Bannock to the area where accessory apartments are allowed. So the property at 3880 North Bannock is currently in the R1.10 zone, and it does not allow for accessory dwelling units. If this ordinance text amendment is approved, it does allow any future owners of this property to go through the process and apply for an ADU. They would be allowed to have an ADU provided they meet the qualifications of 1430. This application does not apply to any other properties in the area. As mentioned, it's specifically to amend this map showing where accessory dwelling units are allowed, basically on the east side of I-15. The property owners have gone through and gotten the signatures of support from 66% of their surrounding neighbors. So they've had a relatively good communication with their neighbors, and generally speaking, staff is in support of ADUs. Our concern in this case, and the reason that in our staff report we recommended denial, is that an accessory apartment requires owner occupancy. Code requires that an ADU somewhere on the property, either the main dwelling or the accessory apartment, be occupied by an owner occupant. And our definition for owner occupant starts with an individual who owns 50% of the dwelling unit or more and occupies the dwelling unit with the bona fide intent to make it their primary residence. As part of this application, Christina Gibson has uploaded all of the documentation showing that it is her intent to make this her primary residence. However, William Gibson is the other owner on title. So in the definition of owner occupant, it It has all of the documentation that you need to upload to show the intent that it is your primary residence. And it also has a subsection stating that if a person is an owner on title but does not occupy it, they can upload the following documents as listed in subsection D2 A, B, and C, or DII A, B, and C. While we believe that the intent of the code was to have that function as an exemption if there was more than one owner on title, that the language there doesn't actually specify that. And staff, our understanding was that because they could not upload any documentation showing income or tax deduction on the property, they could not upload all of the required documents. The neighborhood feedback that we've gotten from this item, when presented at a district meeting, a poll of residents that were there, 24 were in favor of it, 5 were against. And then there was just some additional clarification calls. When presented to Planning Commission, their findings were to recommend approval, which was different than what our staff report originally recommended, based on the fact that they have not owned the property long enough to have tax documents to show that they have not claimed income or tax deduction, that they basically meet that qualification. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Jessica? Thank you, Jessica. Is
Sure,
the
Garrett.
applicant here? And if so, would they care to speak? Welcome.
My name is Joseph Fawcett, city resident of Provo. Christina Gibson would have liked to present, but unfortunately she's recovering from a brain injury. So I am her husband, so I'll be presenting on her behalf. So I have a letter here that Christina wrote, and I'll just be reading it off and and I'll be answering questions as we follow along with a slideshow that we sent. All right, so Christina said, I'm presenting to respectfully request that the city consider our situation and grant permission for us to maintain an accessory dwelling unit at our property. I'd like to share a bit of background to explain why I believe this request aligns with the spirit of the city's housing goals. When I purchased this home, my father helped me make it financially possible. The affordability of this investment was based on a long-term plan to rent out the main unit while living in the ADU. This setup allows me to build stability while staying close to my family, all of whom live here in Utah County. This house is not a short-term project for me. I plan to make it my home. I'm committed to living here long-term and eventually plan to move into the main home as my family grows. If circumstances ever require me to relocate, I would either sell the property or rent it as a single unit to one party. I have no intention of using it as short-term housing. When my father and I purchased this home, this property was within the legal bounds to own an ADU. However, while we were in escrow, the laws changed, and it was only after the sale went through that we learned of the change. Despite the shifting regulations, we have done our best to follow every step of the process in good faith. We collected positive signatures from all of our neighbors that we were able to reach, and those that we were not able to reach were actually renters themselves, so we were unable to contact them. And we've worked to ensure the property is well maintained and a good fit for the neighborhood. So this is kind of the timeline of how everything worked out. In November is when me and Christina got engaged. And so that is when her father and her put the plans forth to look for a place where we could live that is nearby BYU, because I'm currently attending BYU. So in December, they found a location that met all the requirements and entered escrow. And then in January is when we closed escrow. But as previously noted, the policies and the area boundaries had changed during that December to January transition. And so we were not aware of the change because we checked in December and not during escrow. So in February, we bought the house. We figured we'd have enough time to complete the permanent process before we got married. Turns out that it was more involved and lengthier than we expected. We started the permanent process in February and found out they had changed the zoning rules. We immediately started the amendment process. So then we got married in May and we moved in June. And then July is when that neighborhood meeting, which was previously mentioned, was held, 20 in favor, 5 against. And then just this past month in August, we attended the planning commission meeting, which was unanimous in favor of us moving forward to this. Our future is, this ADU is approved. We intend to stay there for as long as reasonable. My family is all here in Utah as well as her family. We just want to stay in this area. However, the only way that we could afford a house currently with the prices and everything was doing the ADU situation to help cover the mortgage and everything. And that was made possible through her father's help. And that is why he is on the title and deed as well as Christina is herself. Some concerns that have been brought up in past meetings and past things are listed above. One of the main issues is parking on that street. It's a pretty steep street and there are no sidewalks along the entire street. So we put this together. Right there is our house right there. And there's actually about 7 parking spaces available, 3 along the side of the house, 2 in front of a garage. And then there's also a 2-car garage attached to the house. So it can comfortably park 7 vehicles. And currently the main tenants of the house have 3 and we have 1. So we are perfectly taken care of as well as parking. We haven't had any issues so far. And we are actually the only house along Bannock Drive that does have a sidewalk, while none of the others do. Another concern that one of the neighbors raised is they're worried that us making an ADU is that we would start construction to add an add-on or an additional unit in the backyard. But the house is actually already currently set up for an ADU with 2 separate units in the main house itself. So there'd be no extra construction. It would just be as the house is currently built and maintained. And the reason that we're going through this process is because we're not directly related to the people that live upstairs. If we were related to them, then it could be considered one structure, one family dwelling unit. But because I'm not, this is the process that we're going through. Our main goal is, as our family grows, obviously our family is brand new, is to move up into the main unit and rent out the bottom unit to other students or families in our situation that we're in right now to continue to make it more affordable for us in the future. And as mentioned earlier, if we are required to move, we'd be selling it as a single unit or renting it as a single unit because we would not be living there ourselves. And really just to wrap up our point here is there are several unauthorized ADUs in the neighborhood that we're aware of, but we didn't want to go through that route. We wanted to make sure that we did this all in good faith. So before we even bought the house, we checked the zoning laws and made sure we were okay, but then they changed in the process of closing for the house. And we believe that this situation not only helps us and continue to grow our family, which is obviously in line with Provo's goals, but also provides additional housing for other people who are potentially school students or just in between places at the time. That is why we believe that our situation is within the spirit of Provo's housing goals. Thank you for our consideration.
Thank you, Joseph and Christina. Any questions for either of them? Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, yes, Councillor Bogdan.
So the unit is currently being rented?
Yes. Yeah, we bought the house it went through in January, and we started the process at the very beginning of February, and we were not living there at the time. It was just a rental property, which we had the renter's license and everything taken care of. But as I said, the process, we didn't expect to have to go through all of this. And so it took much longer than anticipated. So after we got married at the end of May, we moved in, and I've been going to school at Troy.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. This item is available for public comment. If there are any here who would wish to make a public comment, it's open at this time. Please state your name and city of residence.
Hi, my name is Rhoda Goffin. I am from Provo. I'm Indian Hills resident, actually. And I'm here with kind of a double representation tonight. So while we do have one of our co-chairs here today from District 1, I am representing the Indian Hills since I am a resident. I want to go over some of the things that I already sent to you in the emails. You know, you're all capable of reading and having those notes. Although I do want to note that I did do a survey of my neighbors and tried to keep it as uncontentious, open, and get their opinions. I did have discussions with a number of them. A number of them had a lot of questions. My findings from the 29 people who responded to the 40 questions that I sent, or the 40 emails that I sent out, was an overwhelming, yes, they support this. It's well over 70% of the people supported it. Even if you can assume that the people who did not respond were no's, we're still at 60% of the people who support this. Why do they support it? Because the residents are really an exception to the rule. What you have here are people who were trying to do what was the right thing under one rule that existed when they entered into an agreement to purchase the home. Something changed on them as they purchased the home, and they were no longer allowed to do that under the special use. So they've gone through the process of trying to get the RDU approval. Quite frankly, they would be happy with special use. Quite frankly, the neighborhood would be quite happy with special use. And I encourage you to take into consideration something that you actually talked about last December, which was, what do we do if somebody's caught in limbo? They're out there trying to get their application approved. And see if the city attorney or planning commission has the ability to consider this application under that use. I think it would make everyone in the neighborhood happy. It would certainly resolve the issue for our neighbors who we now love. But when I spoke to the planning commission, I had not met them, but they are wonderful people. They're giving. The people who are renting in the home are exactly the kind of residents we want. We are not having problems with it. What we are having problems with are unauthorized ADUs, landlords who are renting for rental, who are not living on the property, not in the neighborhood, not in the county, not in the country. Those are people who are causing problems for us. Now, I have mentioned to some of you that I do plan to follow up on some of those things, work with enforcement. I'm just finding out a lot of these things as a brand new Indian Hills representative. So we will be doing what we can to make this happen, but you have a lot of power on this particular issue. And even if you don't want to address spot coding, you have an opportunity to use that to your advantage and send this back. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Rhoda.
My name is Jennifer Knapp, and I am actually the first one that ever did an overlay zone in Provo City 30 years ago, I think almost, when we bought our home in Southeast Provo. And it was a huge blessing to our family. We didn't want to rent it, but that was one way. My husband was in school, exactly like this fine couple here. And we wanted to start a family, but we couldn't afford the whole home to ourselves. And we didn't need the space all to ourselves. So we had a rental in the basement for a couple of years while we were upstairs. And it was great because we knew what was going on. And we knew what was happening in the yard. We knew, vehicles. We knew what was happening. And because of that, we were able to, after a couple of years, have the whole home to ourselves, which is what this couple plans to do. And we were blessed to have 9 children in that home. So it was a huge blessing to us. And we've stayed here. We did look at one point like, well, if it didn't pass, well, we could move and have our whole home as rental, which where we lived, there was a rental at the house up the street from us, and it was awful. They were absent landlords, owners, everything. It was just awful. So I am in full support of this, and I know how personally it's blessed my life and my kids' lives. And now we have a home all to ourselves, and it's been wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you, Jennifer. Is there anyone else who would like to make public comment?
Sharon Mehmet, I'm also in District 1. I just wanted to make comment. I was one of the people at the neighborhood meeting who voted against this. Not because I'm against these neighbors. I don't even know them. I have a problem with the spot zoning that we've got going on here. And I'm curious as these neighbors moved in and thought that they would be able to do this under whatever current policy we had at the moment that would give them that exception. I love that idea. I don't understand, frankly, why we're asking neighbors if they like us enough to let us do a thing and then change the code just for that house, knowing full well at some point they're going to die and move on, and so am I. So, but now you've got this spot zone here where we don't know any of the people that were originally involved. And so they still have to go through the process, as Jessica said, they still have to follow all the rules. Why are we spot zoning it that way? So that's my concern with this. I wonder if, as they say, they were in the process for whatever this experiment was. I've tried so hard to follow this process. And I don't remember this experiment, but I love the idea. So I don't remember it being canceled. I wish we could go back, and maybe Brian can answer whether we can allow them to do this under some exception. Somebody brought it up to me that there was an exception that was in the process that for some reason the council approved it, but then they were discouraged or decided not to continue the experiment. But that's about all the detail I got. So I don't know if somebody has history that they could explain to us why it was canceled.
Thank you, Sharon. That may come up in our discussion here tonight. Anyone else?
Hi there. My name is Ben Iyer. I'm a resident of Provo. I live not in this neighborhood. I live in an adjacent neighborhood, just kind of by Rock Canyon. But I just want to share my thoughts with the council around spot zoning as well. I think there will sometimes be extenuating circumstances where it makes sense to grant exceptions, but I would hope that the council would be extremely careful of how you do that, because there are significant consequences, and I know that there's been ad nauseum conversations about ADUs for years. And the reason is because it's important to people, the protection of their neighborhood. You know, we moved to Provo about 10 years ago, and it was important to us to live in a single family zone neighborhood because that's the type of neighborhood we desired. And so the continual request for more and more spot zoning runs the risk of changing neighborhoods over time. Again, I love that as a people and as Provo, we like to look for extenuating circumstances to accommodate people. But I just hope the council will think carefully about each individual one that comes before you, because it does run the risk of having some pretty significant impacts on the neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
My name is David Taylor. I'm also a long-term resident of Provo. Moved away and then moved back after many years. Similar to the neighborhood that we're talking about, the Oak Hills neighborhood is my neighborhood. My grandfather was the first one to move up on the hill, and he and all of his family lived right here on 5th West. It used to be called Sandy Alley because of all the Dixons with red hair right here. There's all sorts of Dixon homes still on 5th West. But my grandfather, he and his brother said, we want a different neighborhood than we live in. They wanted a little more rural. They wanted a little more optionality. And so they moved up on the hill, and it became what we have now, Oak Hills, with its character and charm and Uncle Bud's Park and the great neighborhood that it is. In contrast, we have other neighborhoods in Provo. We have down here by the train station, we have wonderful brand new units going in, housing. We have just right across, just up the street. And right over here, we have denser housing. We have other places in Provo where the residents desire the types of units that they live in. We have student housing areas that are there. And so across Provo, we have very many diverse areas and diverse neighborhoods. With that in mind, when people approach where they're going to live in Provo, they are very concerned about the long-term effects. Now, this couple or other couples or other families who say, well, I want to live in a specific place. They want that for a purpose. But when they move, those exemptions are still there if they've been spot exemptions. They're open to those state people, they're open to out-of-state buyers.
Thank
I
you.
would ask you to carefully consider spot exemptions and deny them.
Thank you, David. If there's no additional public comment, we'll close public comment and bring the item back to council for discussion. Brian, I'm aware of the exemption the council passed earlier this year, lowering the minimum age from 65 to 60 for basically a senior couple to be able to rent out. Are there other exemptions?
As I've been listening to the comments, I've been thinking about how best to address this. I think I need to give a 2 or 3 minute primer on ADU history. Is that okay, Chair Garrett?
Of course, of course.
So one of the citizens alluded to the overlay zone. So a few years ago, before the state took some action about ADUs, the way this worked in Provo is we had an A and an S overlay zone. And an overlay zone is a limited use zone that you put on top of another zone just to add permitted uses to that zone. We had 2 of them, accessory dwelling units and supplementary dwelling units. That's why the A and the S overlay. And our ordinances at the time said you could only apply for those overlay zones if you had a minimum area. You had to have so many acres of coverage. You couldn't just apply for one house, right? But the way that those worked is people came in and said, I want to apply the overlay to this geographical area. So the map that's in our current code, that's where that map came from. Back when we were operating under the overlay system, there was a map created that showed where the overlays had been put on top of other zones. Well, most of you probably know this, but a few years ago, the state came in and said, we want to make ADUs permitted uses in all zones, but will grant cities the ability to create some restrictions. And Provo went through a very long and protracted discussion about what those restrictions should be, and ultimately said ADUs are banned in the R1.10 zone and some of the other residential zones unless specifically shown on the map that's in the code. And at the time that we did that, the map that was put into the code was that map of the previous overlay zones that no longer exist. So that's why the map is there, okay? So at the time that the purchasers were buying this house, there existed 3 ways for somebody to try to get an ADU in an area that it wasn't permitted. They could apply for a rezone and try to get their property completely rezoned into a new zone that allowed ADUs. They could apply for a text amendment to change the map and add their property onto the map. Or they could apply for an administrative special use permit. And that administrative special use permit required getting the signatures of a certain percentage of neighbors and was reviewed by the Development Services Department and could allow the granting of a permit specific to those owners to have the ability to run an ADU on that property, okay? It didn't run with the land, it was just specific to those owners. Now, I want to add here that you still had to get a rental dwelling license, okay? You still had to get a rental dwelling license for the ADU, and those rental dwelling licenses were only allowed if the owners occupied the home, and under our code, all the owners occupied the home. That was the situation then and is still the situation now. So that rule did not change during the process that we've talked about. What did change during the time that these applicants were applying or going through their transaction is that special use permit was done away with. And I can certainly understand the frustration. That was a change in the rules. But even if we were operating under those same rules now, even if that rule hadn't changed, the owner occupancy rule would still apply and would still
as we discussed in a meeting a couple of weeks ago, still prevent them from actually getting a rental dwelling license for an ADU. So, and even if those rules had not changed, there was no guarantee at the time that they bought that they would have been able to get the neighbor's permission, right? So that was an anticipated thing. And maybe they talked to the owners to the neighbors before they bought. But even under the rules in existence at the time they started their transaction, they weren't guaranteed that they would get a special use permit, right? So now the situation is the special use permit is gone. They can't get it. So they've gone through the process that remains to them, which is to apply for their home to be added to this map. And that's the question that's before you voting, is whether to add this property to the map, which, as has been discussed by several, is something that runs with the property forever and means that that house can always have an ADU in it regardless of who the owners are, if they meet all the requirements for an ADU, which includes being able to get an ADU rental dwelling license, which requires owner occupancy, which according to what we've been told in the previous meetings, is not the situation for these particular owners. There was some discussion in the Planning Commission where the Planning Commission, in my view, misinterpreted a provision of the code to think that there was an exception there. We've talked about that in a previous meeting, that exception doesn't really exist, and that the council has asked the Planning Commission to review and send back a recommendation on taking out the provision that caused the confusion. So that's where we're at today. Complicated issue, and happy to answer any questions. I know that took longer than the 2 or 3 minutes I said, but.
Thank you, Brian. Counselor, questions or comments? Counselor Whipple?
So in this case, if the father who helped the applicant purchase the property were to sign a quitclaim deed so that she's the only owner, then she would be able to satisfy that sole owner occupant requirement. Is that correct?
Yes, as long as doing so didn't in some way violate what we call our sham transaction rule. It has to be a true transfer in ownership. There can't be either in writing or even verbal, although I recognize that would be difficult to prove, some promise that that ownership interest is still kind of exists, that there's some way that it's going to come back to the previous owner. But if the ownership interest is actually and truly transferred, then the requirements could be met.
Yeah, it seems a hard thing because I know a lot of young people would not be able to purchase a home without the help of their parents, but they probably need the help of their parents and the ability to rent out a portion as an ADU in order to get into homes with these current prices. And so the requirement that we have that all people on title as owners have to occupy the property really just make it impossible for a lot of families to be able to get into it. I think that may have been one of the reasons that there was a possible exception earlier. So somebody could say, I'm an owner, but I'm not an owner occupant. And in the code, it says an owner occupant, which I think led to the confusion that maybe not all owners must be occupants and be in the property. And so this ends up being really a policy question for the council to consider. Do we want to require all people who are on title to live in the home, or would we be okay if some parents are able to help their children buy it and they may be required to be on title for the purposes of the mortgage or something like that in order for them to qualify? I've heard different things from my fellow counselors that that might lead to de facto student housing because I don't know, a rich family could go ahead and buy it and then just fill it up with students because one of their children live in it. But we also have this situation where this is the only way a family is able to get a foothold into it. So I think it bears some consideration for what we want to do. I think it's interesting that the neighborhood is actually quite supportive of these particular applicants. and that they're mourning the fact that we took away the administrative process that would have allowed this just to be a permit for these particular people instead of something that runs with the property. My understanding is that even if they were able to cure the issue with the all owners must occupy it, we don't have a way to issue a permit to them because that had already closed or that process had already ended before they applied, even though it had not ended while they were in the process of purchasing their property. I'm sorry, this is hard.
We have the owner of the property on Zoom, the father of the applicant, and he may have been there during public comment. I apologize. But I'll reopen public comment for you, sir, to speak. And I'm sorry, we've been limiting our public comment to 2 minutes. Please state your name and city of residence. Is it Mr. Gibson? Can you hear me? Because we can't hear you. Okay. Mr. Gibson, we are going to try to establish contact with you via telephone. Sorry about the Zoom functionality. If you could go ahead and come to the podium and we'll just have him speak into the mic.
Oh, sorry. Thanks.
You're on.
Is it Mr. Gibson?
Sorry. I could hear you just fine, but I guess for some reason you couldn't hear my audio. But
right.
I just, when I'd only raised my hand when they, had it on there. The code says that all owners have to occupy the place. The very first slide that Jessica presented showed that an owner occupant, in order to have an ADU, you have to have at least 50% owner occupied live there. And so having the code say 50%, but then having staff interpret that means 100% is confusing to, lay people like me who are trying to read the code and, we don't know what the right way to interpret it is, but the wording seems, confusing, I guess. If the intent was for 100% to be required, why does the code say 50%? I guess is my question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gibson. Is it William Gibson?
Yes.
And what's your city of residence, Mr. Gibson?
I live in Runner Park, California.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. And we will seek clarification on that. Other council discussion or input? Councillor Hoban.
Okay, so there's not a non-permanent path right now. Brian just told me. So the only option is something that's permanent, which I think is not ideal. The special use permit solved that issue. So we're back to it being a permanent thing, which is not ideal. Brian, even if we approved this today, are they unlikely to get an ADU because of as is letter of the law? They couldn't get an ADU even if we approve it because of the ownership issue, right?
That's correct. That's my view, that if you approved this today, the property would appear on the map showing it being a potential ADU site. But
Right.
any owner who wanted to operate an ADU on the property would have to meet all the requirements of code, including getting a rental dwelling license, which they would be unable to get because they don't meet the owner occupancy definition. So the license would not be allowed, which would mean they couldn't legally operate the ADU. And in answer, I guess, do you want me to answer the other question that was just brought up?
Yeah.
So I understand the confusion. I don't know why the code is written this way because it long predates me. I think it seems to me, my speculation is that they added on to the end of it instead of going back and changing the beginning, because I understand what Mr. Gibson is saying. The first subparagraph of the definition of owner occupant says an individual who possesses 50% or more ownership and occupies the dwelling unit with a bona fide intent to make it his or her primary residence. But the problem is that if you read down to section D, subsection D, which I suspect was added later, and they didn't go back and make any changes to A, it says a person who meets the requirements of subsection A may not be deemed an owner occupant if the property has more than one owner and all the owners do not occupy the property. So that subsection makes it so all the owners have to be occupants.
I still have one more question. I know you're not a property attorney, specialize in that. Can you quit claim ownership of a property that you don't own outright? Like if you still have a mortgage on it, is that even possible?
Well, he could quit claim his interest, right? Because he has an interest, she has an interest. He could quit claim his interest to her, which would make her the owner of all the interests. Now, whether the mortgage company would let him do that or whether that would be a violation of the terms of the loan, that's a question I couldn't answer, because the mortgage company needs the property as collateral. If he's the one that's on the mortgage and he's the one paying and now there's no collateral on it, that could be a problem between him and the mortgage company. But
for our purposes,
it would satisfy the ownership requirement.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Others? Counselor McKay.
I want to address this sham transaction law that we enacted last year. We did it for a very purposeful reason, because a lot of investors had discovered a way around having owner-occupied ADUs. And people were putting 5% of a home into a student's name to rent the house out to 6 students. And they could change every semester, every year, whenever that kid moved out, whose name the home was in. So people get creative. We are a hotbed for investors. It's a really, 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 really popular place for a particular group of religious people to own homes. And, there's family reunions and football games and ski vacations and family vacations and kids in college. And we're in a constant battle to keep our housing as affordable as we can. We can't wave a magic wand and make houses cheaper. One of the ways that we try and keep houses cheaper is by having them used legally. Because when they are used illegally, they make so much money that investors will come in and they'll pay $100,000 extra for a home that they can use illegally and put 10 students in and make so much money. And even our fines that we used to do didn't matter. Those fines were just the cost of doing business. And it increases the price of housing. And we have to look out for the people that live here full time, like the couple that want to live here. We want to look out for those people. We want people who want to start home ownership and want to live here long term and need a home. And I lost my train of thought. So we've had to get creative in Provo to try and combat this, and it's just constant. So that was a purposeful law that we did last year because it was happening, and we found out it was happening. It was spreading quickly, and neighborhoods were concerned, and it was creating an issue. And investors can come in and pay cash, and our families here can't compete with that. And so it's a balancing act that's really, really hard. And I think it's also really important to acknowledge that this decision today, and any decision with ADUs ever, has nothing to do with the character of the people. This isn't about character of the people. I love it that so many people love this couple, and that's wonderful, but it's not about, does not reflect. I mean, I guess there could be cases where it does reflect, but generally speaking, this is not a decision about character or the goodness of the people, or that we want them living in our city.
Thank you. Others? Councillor Bogdan?
I'm going to ask a question that was just asked of me. Malia, what percentage of Provo is ADU allowable?
Generally.
So half of our city, half of our stock in our city, half of our housing stock, or half of those? Half of the residential zone areas are ADU allowed. Half of the residential zones in the city are ADU allowable. So you can move in, you can come and do your RDL and just set up shop without any of this changing the zone thing. But there are certain places in Provo that we haven't allowed that to happen. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Handley?
Yeah, this is a really complicated one. And I appreciate very much the feedback we've gotten from the applicants, from the neighborhood leaders. Rhoda, thank you, especially for communicating so well. We've had other cases where that hasn't happened so smoothly. Getting, just as clear feedback as we can from neighbors, I think matters. It's not always, of course, the ultimate deciding factor for us, but it's helpful generally to know, especially when it's such a thorny request as a spot zone, which I don't like. I was, just for background, my counselors know this ad nauseum, but I was very supportive of citywide access to ADUs, and still remain so. But that was a vote we lost. I lost, and a number of others. So the majority of the council felt differently about it, and we respect each other's differences on that. But that's left us with this spot zoning is the only real way to go about this, which I think is just, again, terribly unfortunate, because it is a bigger decision, as Ben was saying. The permanency of it is more concerning, and so it's not something that I like. I'm so hesitant to even talk, because my dear fellow council members are so tired of me on this, and I love them. And we just have had strong differences of opinion, but that I do think that was a mistake, that we took away that special use permit. And I think we're going to continue to have situations where people are going to need them, need the ADUs, and they're going to try to ask for them. But because they're going to be asking for a steeper, harder thing, I think it's going to be harder to say yes. And the market situation is not going to get any better. My own next door neighbor house sold 3 months ago, and nobody moved in for 2 months. And then I finally caught somebody outside the house. I said, "Hey, I'm your new neighbor. I'd like to meet you." And it was a young couple. And they said that they were hoping to be able to rent out a part of the house. I didn't ask what they knew or didn't know, but they found out that that was not possible, and they have decided to rent out the entire house. So I think as a council, we still need to do more and be more innovative and creative to make ownership for young people as flexible as we've made it for people my age. Because I'm now 60, I could rent out a part of my house. And I'm grateful for that, even though I don't have a basement, so it's not going to happen. But I think we really, I understand all the pressures that Councillor McKay just described. For that reason, I have been 100% behind every enforcement tool we can come up with to prevent violations, because those are everyone agrees those are the things that drive down property values. They cause problems in neighborhoods, and nobody likes that. But I don't think we're doing enough to help young people in lower income situations to get a toehold in this housing market. And this is always the #1 recommended tool
to make it happen. So it remains something that I hope this council, I'm stepping off in a few months, so I will never speak again about ADUs the rest of my life, I hope. But, you know, I don't think the issue is going to go away. I just think it's going to continue. And I think the state's not going to leave this alone either. The state may very well help you out and say, we have to, you know, before too long. So I'd rather see it widely accessible and done in a very regulated way, lawful way, and the least impactful on neighborhoods as possible through legal process, so that we're not only protecting against violators and bad actors, but we're also really helping the people on the lower end of the economic scale to get in. So I you know, anyway, I had to express my feelings because I'm not going to be comfortable voting in favor of this because of the owner occupancy rule and because of the spot zoning. But I just wanted to make sure that you at least understood where I'm coming from. I'm very, very sympathetic and wish that we had other alternatives for you. And I feel like that we've let you down, and I'm sorry. Thank you. Councilor Hoban.
Yeah, just another question. Brian, is there any way to approve this like conditionally on the basis that the father would do the quit claim, or would we just continue it and say, come back to us when you have the quit claim? I'm not asking to make it complicated, just wondering.
Yeah, I was going to say it'd make it awfully complicated. I suppose we could do never in all of my time here done a development agreement for an overlay.
So continue it.
It could, but I think
we could continue it though.
It'd be better to have it taken care of up front, I think.
Okay, so I'll just share my 2 cents. I was asking questions before, but my opinion is that we took away the special use permit so that we have an opportunity to review these now on a case-by-case basis and to use our judgment. In my mind, this ADU, there's ample parking, there's neighborhood support. It doesn't seem to be a sham transaction. So from my perspective, I think this is what we want. There's one piece missing, I think, or one concern, which is that it lasts forever. Right? I mean, Brian, once it's there, there's no removing it, right?
I mean, at least in theory, you could, at some point in the future, you could remove the overlay. If when you removed it, somebody was currently using the property as an ADU, they would have a legal non-conforming right to continue using it until it was abandoned. But if at some point after you removed it, there wasn't an ADU there for 6 months, then the right would be abandoned and then it would go away.
All right. Yeah. Well, I guess from my perspective, I don't like the that is perpetual, but I also think that we as a body have the opportunity to use our best judgment. And in this case, it seems like a great spot for an ADU and the neighborhood is supportive. There is a concern that long-term, potentially, they could sell it and then the next landlord could come in and I guess have an ADU as well. They'd have to live there. I mean, I'm thinking worst case scenario, what the nuclear option or, nuclear scenario is. And it's, I don't know. I think they still have to abide by the ADU restrictions. So I'm supportive of it. I guess I'll make a motion that we continue it. And if the applicant is able to get a quit claim to meet the owner occupancy requirement, then it could come back before the council. That's my motion.
Councilor Hoban has made a motion to continue the item based on the terms of what he's stated. Is there a second for that motion? Councilor Handler?
Sure, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any council discussion on that motion? Okay, I'll look for a vote then on the substitute motion. Councilor Christensen?
No.
Counselor Handley,
Yes.
Counselor Bogdan,
No.
Counselor Hoban,
Yes.
Counselor Whipple,
Yes.
Counselor Garrett, no. Counselor McKay.
No.
The substitute motion fails by a vote of 5-2. So we'll
4-3.
continue. Thank you. 4-3, thank you. We'll continue discussion on the original motion. Are there any other counselors who would like to offer comment? Counselor Whipple.
So this is a possible solution that is going beyond requesting an ADU. When my daughter moved out of my house, she moved into the home of a divorced woman who had a couple of college-age boys, so her children living with her. That woman was a head of household. Her children were her relatives, and she was able to also rent out to 2 more unrelated adults. So she rented to my daughter and to another college student. In our code, the definition of a family allows that you can have a head of household and all the people who are related to that head of household. So this could be like your nuclear family. And you can also rent out to 2 more additional related or unrelated persons. That might be people caring for you, or it might be, college-age kids like my daughter or a young couple. The kick for that is that they're supposed to occupy as a single housekeeping unit, sharing common living, sleeping, cooking, and eating facilities. So I don't think this would work if you had a detached ADU because you have clearly separate facilities. But for an internal ADU, if you have that connection between the 2 units, then arguably this could operate as one family. And so this is something that is currently allowed in our code. And my college-age daughter certainly benefited from it. The reason I'm hesitant to bring this up is because this tends to be an excuse that our zoning enforcement officers will hear when they're going to enforce on a property that is not occupied correctly, that we don't clearly have a single housekeeping unit. But for a young couple that's starting their family, that's moving into the home, you are permitted to bring in essentially a couple of roommates, and you would, for any property that you rent out or when you have extra people in your home, you would do your rental dwelling license for them. But that is a small workaround. It doesn't necessarily give 2 housing units. It doesn't give that same level of independence or privacy, but it does give a financial option that can be viable and used by families.
Thank you. I was certainly impressed by Joseph and Christina and their presentation today. Thank you for being here. I was equally impressed a few months ago when we had a neighborhood contiguous to another ADU overlay zone near Kiwanis Park, who secured the interest of, it was something like 27 out of 30 neighbors to add their neighborhood to the overlay zone, allowing that to join them with the ADU exemption. I am in favor of allowing neighborhoods to decide how they address this issue. Some neighborhoods really want to maintain that what's been referred to earlier, single families in single homes, and I respect that right. And I mentioned when we voted on this issue a year ago that I was in favor of letting the neighborhood decide. My preference is to have that happen though in the overlay format, where the entire neighborhood would then become an ADU overlay rather than the spot exemption. I am also concerned about approving on a house-by-house basis, spot exemptions and the changing of the character that would represent for those neighborhoods. Is there anyone else with any other counselors with comment? Counselor Bogdan.
I would also be supportive of a neighborhood coming into this rather than spot zone. Spot zone, I'm not supportive of that either. So I just like to, we have staff in the back that like to hear how council members are thinking and where they're going. I would affirm to what Gary's saying there.
Anyone else? Counselor Christensen?
Well, I appreciate George's comments. One of the great things about democracy is that we can disagree agreeably. It's reasonable that people would see this issue differently. That's reasonable. Because when you talk about ADUs, which side of the coin are you looking at? Are you looking at the side where it actually makes housing more affordable for those who don't use it as an ADU? Or are you looking at the side of the coin where it makes it more affordable, to use it by bringing someone else in? I would agree, this is not about character. This is actually much more commercial. If we spot zone this home, it changes the value by 100, 150, I don't know, something like that, because the value of it being a duplex instead of a single family home. So there are implications to those. There are no easy answers to the housing crisis. We're certainly not going to fix it on the city council. The state's not going to fix. I mean, this is an economic issue, and I think we should do everything we can to help. I also feel strongly that neighborhoods matter. There's half of Provo where you can move in and you can have an ADU if you qualify. There's half of Provo where you cannot. And the place that you chose to buy is not. Now, that I'm more persuaded by an entire neighborhood, if it's a large group, and that entire group, because people have invested their entire life savings, they choose those neighborhoods for a reason. And I care a great deal about the character of neighborhoods. And it's okay for people to live wherever they want. I don't feel as good about someone who wants something and then moves into a neighborhood where that's not provided from a zoning standpoint. So again, there's always two sides to the coin. I don't feel that spot zoning is the answer. And I don't feel that it's appropriate. It's the appropriate way to address this particular issue. So I won't be able to support this.
Thank you. Unless there's any other additional comment, I'll call for a vote. Counselor Handley, I'm sorry, Counselor Hoban, you have additional comment?
Well, I guess I wanted to share my 2 cents on the neighborhood thing. See, I'm actually like the idea. I don't like the idea of large swaths of the city having ADUs. I like the idea, actually. I like this idea better of us being able to have a little more control and discretion on when an ADU is approved. And in this neighborhood, I know we didn't do a scientific survey or anything here, but anecdotally, it appears that the majority of the neighborhood is supportive. So you are by allowing this, you would be following the will of the neighborhood. And it's interesting that if we were to have a neighborhood approved, you still have a third of that neighborhood that disapproves, right? So you're enabling a whole neighborhood to dictate, but you're enabling 2/3 of the people to dictate what the other third have to deal with. And in this case, we're just simply asking for one ADU, even though the majority of the neighborhood has approved. And especially the surrounding neighborhoods who would be most impacted, right, by the parking and such. So I guess I just struggle with the logic of, we'll go ahead and allow a neighborhood to, 2/3 of a neighborhood to dictate what another whole third of a neighborhood has to deal with, as opposed to just saying, hey, let's take it on a case-by-case basis, use our best judgment, and that's why we're here. This situation makes sense. I know I'm not going to sway anybody's vote, but I'm just sharing my philosophical difference with you on that, perhaps for future consideration. But I know everybody's just trying to do the best thing for Provo City. I fully believe that this council is well intended, And so I'm not faulting anyone, just to have a difference of opinion, I guess, but thanks.
Thank you, Counselor Hoban. Counselor Whipple.
That's a really interesting point that Counselor Hoban brought up, because our general plan indicates that we need to do this gradual increase of density, very gradual infill throughout the city, in all of our neighborhoods. And the more gradual, the smaller that is, the easier it is for the neighborhoods to absorb it. And in that case, a spot zone like this, especially with the neighborhood support, is exactly that kind of very concrete, well-defined, tiny increase that is consistent with our general plan. And it would have much less impact on the neighborhood as a whole than something like making the entire neighborhood subject to ADUs. So that's really interesting, because it is a way to make that very incremental increase that the neighborhood can absorb without changing its character, without a significant change, and in this case, with the full support of the neighborhood.
Thank you, Counselor Whipple. All right, I'll call for a vote on the implied motion. Counselor Handley?
Remind me again, the implied motion is
The
to
motion is to
approve the
amend the
applicant.
Provo City Code regarding the area where ADUs are permitted.
Thank you. Okay, no.
Counselor Bogdan?
Did I not understand that right?
No, you understood it right. And you voted no?
I said I was gonna I was not gonna be comfortable approving this because of the spot zoning. So
Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
so that's a no. A no for me too.
No.
Yeah, I'm not going to approve
Okay.
an ordinance amending Provo City Code.
Thank you. Counselor Hoban?
Yes.
Counselor Whipple?
Yes.
Counselor Garrett? No. Counselor McKay?
No.
Counselor Christensen?
no.
So that motion fails by a vote of 5-2. Thank you. And thank you again, Joseph and Christina, for coming. Next, we have an implied motion on an ordinance amending the zone map classification of property located at 920 South, 1020 West from a one-family residential R18 zone and agricultural zone to a one-family residential R1 zone. This is in the Sunset neighborhood and will be presented also by Jessica Danicki.
Thank you. Yes, so this application is to apply to rezone the property at 920 West and 20 South. You can see it's outlined on the image here. It currently falls into two separate zonings. The property owner's application to rezone is for the intent of subdividing. They cannot subdivide and meet the zoning requirement of either zone for lot width. So their application to rezone to R17, which is the zoning directly adjacent to it on the west, to allow for the creation of one additional lot that will allow for one additional single-family dwelling. Any questions?
Any questions for Jessica? Thank you, Jessica. This item is open for public comment. If there are any here who would like to speak to this potential rezone, I invite you to come to the podium. Seeing none, we'll bring the item back to council for discussion. If there are no comments or questions, we'll go ahead and call for a vote. Counselor Bogdan?
Yes.
Counselor Hoban?
Yes.
Counselor Whipple?
Yes.
Counselor Garrett? Yes. Counselor McKay?
Yes.
Counselor Christensen?
Yes.
And Counselor Handley.
Yes.
That motion passes by a vote of 7-0. We will now move to we're actually moving on your agenda. It's item 11, a brief item that we're moving to this part of the agenda, which is a public hearing for the consolidated annual performance and evaluation report, which will be presented by our community grant administrator, Melissa McNally.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So our consolidated annual performance and evaluation report is just a report that we submit annually to HUD that just explains what we've done with our funding and how many individuals and areas have benefited from our HUD funds in the past year. So the projects that were undertaken with CDBG which is Community Development Block Grant, those projects this past year were our emergency home repair, egress windows. We have our commercial facade program. Public Works had a few projects in the Foothills and Joaquin neighborhoods. And we had some nonprofits do capital improvements and their regular social services. And then with our home funding, we have two down payment assistance programs. This year, we were able to provide one household in Provo with down payment assistance and 17 households countywide with down payment assistance. And thankfully, those programs are picking up. We've done some changes to try to help those first-time home buyers get into those homes. So that's exciting to see movement where there hasn't been much for the last few years. So with our funding accomplishments and our community development block grant, we had 11 jobs were created or retained. 3 small businesses in Provo were assisted. We had 7 homeowner homes rehabilitated, and financial assistance was provided to 18 households with first-time home buyers funding.
Is that the same that you mentioned earlier?
It is, yeah. And then this is just a breakdown of the rest of our CDBG funding. This is funding that's done. It's measured through different improvements through area. They look at census tract numbers to come up with those, and other programs are just on an individual basis. So this is just kind of a breakdown of all of the different projects and the different social services and how many people that benefited throughout the past year. So we have 119,778, and that's just again based on census tract and then other factors. And then because this past year was the 5th year of the consolidated plan for the 2020 through 2024, I've just kind of laid out where we are with our overall consolidated plan goals. And in some of those, we've more than surpassed the goals that we set back for our 2020 year. And we did fall short in a few areas. So hopefully we'll be on track with this consolidated plan that we're starting this year. So, and that's it. Do you have any questions for me on any of those?
So as part of that plan, Melissa, you're establishing new goals for the next 5-year period?
Yeah, the consolidated plan, that's what you all just approved in the spring. And so we've already started on the next consolidated plan and plan year.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any questions for Melissa? Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
This item was presented in the context of a public hearing. So the public hearing is now open. If there's anyone who would wish to make comment relative to the consolidated annual performance and evaluation report, you can come to the podium. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment. Melissa.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to add that to the public comment, we are taking comment through the 28th. And you can do that on the website also. If you're not comfortable in this public forum, we do have a place on our website that you can do that as well.
So the 28th, which is Sunday?
Sunday.
Sunday?
Yeah.
Okay, online. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Melissa. And this item does not require a vote. So we'll move back to the agenda then on item number 5, which is an implied motion on an ordinance amending the zone map classification of property located generally at 3200 West Bulldog Lane from the OSPR and R1.20 zones to one family residential with performance development overlay R16 zone. This is in the Lakeview North neighborhood. This will be presented to us by our Director of Development Services, Bill Pepperoni, and also available for questions, an executive with Nielsen Homes, Matt Meyer.
Thank you, council members. It's good to finally be before you for this zone change. As it was said, we're asking for the R16 Performance Development Zone. The Performance Development Zone is the mechanism in the ordinance that allows us to move housing off of the environmentally sensitive area on the south and move it to the north and cluster the housing a little bit. The housing, also, this is a joint venture development between Nielsen Homes and Provo City. The housing deficit we're experiencing in our state, especially in terms of housing that city employees can afford, this deficit is just very difficult to resolve, very difficult to solve. It's going to take very creative solutions. It's going to take every tool in the box to try to resolve this housing crisis we're having. While this is a unique development in Provo, a unique development approach in Provo, cities like Moab and Park City have that have even greater housing needs than we have been using tools like this for many years. They've taken city-owned land and they've used it to provide workforce housing and even affordable housing for city employees and for even just the general public. Provo Housing Authority, having formed a land trust, is instrumental in helping to make this happen. Sarah Van Cleve, the executive director of the Housing Authority, is here and would also be happy to answer questions, I'm sure. Every Provo City first responder that we can relocate from Saratoga Springs, Rugel Mountain, or Santa Quin into our city is not only a benefit to our city, to our citizens, but it really affects the quality of life for that employee. This subdivision delivers on goals we set almost 2 years ago, a development of single-family detached homes, half of which would be workforce housing for first responders and city employees, and the other half that would be workforce housing, that would be market rate homes. I think by now the council and the public's very familiar with this development, so I'll just answer questions. And of course, Matt and Sarah are also here to answer any questions that you have.
I also expect, Bill, that most are familiar with this, but could you just remind us publicly of what half means? Half workforce, half how many units?
So the subdivision is proposed to be 68 units, all single family detached, as I said, as it's illustrated here on the concept plan. The green area in the bottom is the wetland area that we've taken housing units off of and moved it to the north. This development plan would have 34 workforce housing units and 34 market rate units. The different housing types are all mixed together. They're not clustered with one market segment here and another market segment there. They're mixed together. And as you can see from the illustration across the bottom, as you drive through the development, you really wouldn't be able to tell which is which, other than some of the workforce housing may be smaller or may only have a one-car garage, but building materials, architectural styles, all of those things would be similar. You wouldn't be able to distinguish one from the other.
Bill, your position with development, economic development in Provo gives you a broader view of area needs. Some feedback we get from West Provo residents is the need for commercial and space in this area. And some have wondered if this could be mixed use or even commercial. The subdivision to the north, Ivory Homes, Broadview Shores, could you review with us their plans for commercial space in West Provo?
Sure. The staff is well aware of the desire for commercial amenities on the west side, and we completely agree with that. As you know, we tried for several years everything we could think of to get a Smith's at Geneva and Center. The council even threw into that discussion $1 million of AARP COVID relief funds to help make that happen. And those COVID relief funds were specifically earmarked for economic development. It wasn't Provo City General Fund. It wasn't Power Department surplus. Those were federal dollars sent us during COVID. Even with that incentive, we could not get a Smith's to work there. The next site we thought might be useful or helpful for commercial development is the place where Walmart is going down on the south side of the city by Lakeview Parkway and the I-15. This third parcel, which staff thought would be most conducive to commercial development, is about a half mile from the high school site. It is planned for commercial uses. I've recently talked to Ivory Homes, and they're ready to put commercial businesses in there as soon as they get businesses ready to go or wanting to go there. In the meantime, they will keep building housing around it to try to help encourage that to happen. One of the reasons why we felt very good about this parcel being a commercial piece is, first of all, 17 acres is a lot more usable for commercial. The Smiths and Geneva site was just a little over 10 acres. And I'm telling you, we had to use a shoehorn to get a grocery store to fit on the site. It was very tight. It was very difficult. We were able to make it work, but it was not easy. 17 acres is much more conducive to a use like that. This is an arterial class road. You've got several hundred feet of frontage on the arterial class road. Geneva is an arterial class road. Okay, that's a third of a mile from this site, Geneva intersection. 2000 North is a minor arterial. With all of that street access, we thought that would make this property much more conducive to commercial development.
Thank you, Bill. Questions for Bill Pepperoni? Thank you, Bill. I do have a question for the developer. Is it Matt? Could you
It's Matt Meyer.
introduce yourself?
I'm an engineer, but I was recently promoted to executive when you announced me, so I appreciate that.
Just tell your boss, right?
No, I really like it. I'm going to stick with it.
Relative to another concern that I hear frequently, Matt, is relative to the traffic around this area. What mitigation has the developer, Nielsen Homes, considered to, especially near the high school, to mitigate traffic?
So the traffic it has been well studied throughout the area with this in mind. And speaking with can you remind me of the Provo's traffic engineer? Vern Kiesler has spoken in previous meetings that the subdivision won't add significantly to the traffic.
Driveways are on the interior.
Oh, so if I can pull back up.
There you go.
You'll see that we have several lots that back up actually against Bulldog. So that would be their backyards, and they front against the new roads that will be built in the subdivision. Okay, great. So the reason we did that is we wanted to line up one entrance with the high school entrance, just because it's easier for people to not get in traffic accidents, especially if you're a high school student, if you see a more predictable traffic pattern. We also didn't want anything along this curve because you run into sightline concerns if you are backing out on a curve of a roadway that has a fairly decent speed limit there. And so we limited the entrances onto Bulldog as here, and then we combined up two entrances each with these lots that are up there on the northern point of the subdivision.
Thank you, Matt. Any other questions for the developer? Yes, Counselor Christensen.
So we've had a chance to learn a little bit about Nielsen Homes and are just delighted to find a partner like you to help us. I know the administration has worked very hard to get you to participate. Could you tell us that don't know you a little bit about what your mission is and why you're uniquely qualified to do this type of development?
So most of our building to this point has been in Weber and Davis counties. Our mission, the Jed Nelson, the owner of our company, I recently became his executive, which is great. Jed Nelson, his mission, he stated it that we want single income homes, which means that housing shouldn't be so much a part of your life that everybody has to work all the time to be able to afford it. And, you know, in the economy, the way that housing is going today, as was discussed earlier in this meeting, having two people working all the time may not be able to afford housing anymore. And so we're on a mission to change that. We have a subdivision in Weber County that we started a couple of years ago that has a mixed traditional market rate homes with a starter rate home project. But rather than having them segregated, we've mixed them throughout the subdivision so that normal passerby, as we say, wouldn't see a starter or a market rate home. They'd only see a home. And this opportunity in Provo has been a real honor for us to participate in, because what it is for us is a huge test to see if the land costs are lowered, how low can we lower the cost of the home? And, you know, we don't have a lot of models of people that have been able to do that in the past, because it hasn't been much of a concern up until now. So we look at this as a great opportunity to really test how can we design a subdivision to lower the construction costs of the subdivision itself. How can we change the designs of the home while keeping it with a good feel that something that will be saleable? How can we lower the cost, the building cost of the home? And how can we partner with cities on land that is frankly available in every city across Utah that's just currently not being used? How can we use it smarter to work closer to our goal of having single income homes?
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
This item is available for public comment. We'll open public comment at this time, and any who would like to express their thoughts can approach the podium at this time. Please state your name and city of residence, and we have the clock set for 2 minutes.
Hello, I'm David Gale. I live in Provo. Thank you for considering this workforce housing proposal. First of all, I fully support the goal of creating more affordable housing. My concern is the location. The site right next to Provo High sits in an area already considered a food desert, and recently construction began on the residential housing in what had been one of the few prime centrally located commercial parcels in West Provo on Center Street. With that change, we're quickly running out of sites that could support everyday neighborhood services anywhere centrally located in West Provo. Almost all the neighbors I've spoken with agree that the proposed Walmart in South Provo will not meet the grocery needs of this area. Residents here will still lack nearby options. I'm encouraging you to amend this plan to reserve some commercial pads, space for a small restaurant or a cafe, a dance or fitness studio, hair salon, or other local businesses. Even if this particular site isn't ideal for a full grocery store, families still need places to gather, shop, and meet daily needs close to home. and having local shops and services would create job opportunities for Provo High students, allowing teens to work close to home and school. The workforce housing concept is great, but does it truly meet the greatest need for this part of Provo if it takes one more opportunity for commercial and community services off the map? Please at least consider a mixed use approach so that future residents and the broader West Side have access not only to housing, but also to everyday services and youth jobs that make a neighborhood thrive.
Thank you, David.
Thanks.
Hello, my name is Adam Barrowman, and I live in Provo, specifically in West Provo, where the plan is taking place. I also agree with affordable housing. I think that's a very commendable goal, but I feel that there's been not enough effort or investigation into a small business like David suggested, or a grocer, right? And I have heard of surveys being done, but the only surveys I've heard are from Catrice McKay, which, although great surveys, and it's a great thing that you did them, I don't feel like they were enough of an investigation into the actual community of West Provo and the people who live there, the residents. And so I feel like there should be more investigation done into the needs of West Provo, into the wants of the people, the neighborhoods who live there, and the space available to use. So I implore the council to consider the needs of West Provo before making this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Well spoken.
Hello, I'm Christina Barrowman, and I live in West Provo. I urge you to reconsider this proposal. I've lived over in West Provo for 23 years. When Provo High was built in our neighborhood, we were really excited and hopeful. We believed that alongside the school, there would be momentum toward adding community resources, like a grocery store, maybe a couple of fast food options, some of the things that David suggested, to serve not only the students, but also the thousands of residents who call West Provo home. A few months ago, we learned that the City Council was planning to rezone this area for more housing. And while this is important, I ask you to pause this resolution so that residents and city leaders can work together on a more balanced plan, one that provides housing, yes, but also essential food and service options for our community. Thanks for your time and considering the families of West Provo.
Thank you, Christina.
Hello, members of the council. Oops. Thanks for listening to my thoughts on this. I would also like this proposal to be reconsidered.
Could you share your name with us, please?
Oh, yeah, I'm Janice Knuckles. My husband and I have lived in West Provo for almost a year now, and we're just south of this proposed development. So we're very concerned about the environmental impact on this area, but we're also concerned about how how critical Provo workers are going to be accommodated by this development. The Department of Workforce Services states that an affordable home should cost no more than 30% of one's monthly income, including utilities. My daughter is a registered nurse working in the emergency room at Children's Hospital. Her take home, she is somebody who should be accommodated by such a proposal. Her take home monthly is $4,500. Now, I'm not a mathematics expert, but by my calculation, even with a low interest rate of 5.75, she would need a $200,000 down payment to make monthly payments of $2,000, which is half her income, certainly more than a third. Furthermore, when I raised this issue to her, she said, "Mom, there are houses in Provo that are under 500,000, and we flipped through just a few real estate listings and found about a half a dozen, and it was just in a few minutes. Under 500,000, which is the price that we heard the affordable housing would cost, and more square footage, more bedrooms, more bathrooms. So I just don't understand how this is affordable housing for people who, the median worker for Provo City workers is about 68,000. So what is the cost of this development? Environmental disruption, school systems are going to be taxed to the max, and furthermore.
Thank you, Janice.
I'm Steve Zuckerman, resident of Provo, Utah. I just wanted to bring to the attention of the committee and the public that the Bulldog Lane development has designated wetlands on it, according to the Environmental Protection Agency and the Utah Environmental Protection Agency, the Army Corps of Engineers, the Department of Environmental Quality, and the Department of Natural Resources. And under the Utah State Law 1727A-520, wetlands, a land use authority that issues a land use permit that affects land designated as wetlands by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers or another agency of the federal government shall provide a copy of the land use permit to the Utah Geologic Survey established in section 79-3-201. Has that permit to the USGS been submitted for the portion of this development that is designated wetlands? That's my question. Can anybody answer that question?
Possibly during our discussion, Steve will be able to provide you with an answer.
And in addition, as of September 2025, the one-time appropriation of $1.5 million for Utah Senate Bill 270 has been allocated to the Utah Division of Forestry and State Lands. The funds are being used to conduct a comprehensive study of Utah Lake, Senate Bill 65A-10-5. So that is as of September of this year, the money has been appropriated. Okay, the Senate bill passed a legislation titled Utah Lake and Great Salt Lake Study Amendment, were passed by the House and the Senate.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. We appreciate your comment, your public comment. Thank you, Steve. Others?
Hi, my name's Sarah Van Cleve. I'm the Executive Director of Utah Community Land Trust, and this is my Deputy Executive Director. I just wanted to take a moment for you, the council, as well as the public audience, to impress upon you how important land trusts are to city commitment for the affordable housing. Utah Community Land Trust is new in development, but we have other very successful land trusts in the state of Utah. Bill brought up Moab, which has provided workforce housing all along. The most important thing that I think people need to walk away from is understanding that the cost of the land does affect the cost of the home. And if we can remove the cost of the land, that makes the home more affordable for first-time home buyers, and essentially allows us to hold on to that land in perpetuity and protect the investment of the city who has put forth this development, because we will have deed restrictions, resale requirements, and income restrictions that will support workforce housing.
Yes, and as Sarah said, there'll be deed restrictions, and the land trust will offer home ownership as a form of workforce housing, enabling essential workers such as teachers, healthcare professionals, and public safety employees to live in the communities they serve. Unlike traditional affordable housing models, land trusts require owner-occupied units, fostering long-term stability and neighborhood investments. There are income restrictions. We're going to be able to sell to like buyers By leveraging the power of homeownership, the land trust aims to lift families out of poverty, build generational wealth, create stronger, more resilient communities. Studies have shown that children who grow up in stable, affordable housing are more likely to succeed in school, enjoy better.
Excuse me, Sarah, are you done?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was going to give you one more minute, but that's all right. If you,
No, I'm just kidding.
since both of you are approached. Others who would like to comment?
Keaka Hanamaikai, Provo, been here 44 years. Probably longer than a lot of people on this stage. But I will say that the west side, the airport, Epic Park, this Walmart in the worst place in Provo is not for Provo residents. Epic is being used by other programs out of Provo. These people are coming because it's next to the freeway. You guys made that road not for Provo, you made it for the county, right? I lived on the west side for a long time. And getting to the grocery store is nuts. Okay, we go to Orem. Tax dollars go to Orem. Sand Hill Road. That Walmart is the only place that these people can go on the west side. There's nothing on the west side at all. You're putting this at the end of a 500 West, which I know this city as well as anybody here. You're going to make that a stinking freeway. There's so many kids on that road. You have all of those policemen that patrol that road. It does not help. Okay. And you're going to make that what? You're going to change the speed limit and put speed bumps. It doesn't help. Okay. So anyway, I'm just telling you from my own experience, you haven't done anything on the west side. And you guys just keep passing the buck. Okay. I would hope while I am still under 50 that you guys would do something that would benefit something more than that east side. Okay. I was coming up North Provo. My office is in Springville. I was coming up 900 East. The road's closed. Yeah, there's policemen on the north side of the water when the mud closed.
Thank you. Could you tell us your name one more time?
And
thank you.
Anyway.
Thank you, Keaka. Any others? If not, we'll close public comment and bring the item back to the council for discussion. Councillor McKay?
David mentioned a food desert. We definitely know that we need food over there. I used to live in South East Provo, and we had the same problem. It was definitely a huge issue getting the grocery store. You had to drive a while. Sitting next to is that your son sitting next to you? No. Okay. Sorry, I forget your first name, but we did talk at that town hall I was at. So you referenced a survey. So it was not a statistical survey that I did by any means, but I've been on the council for 4 years and I get a lot of comments from the Southeast and the Southwest about grocery stores. So I asked every one of them because I live by Days Market. I grew up there. I used to live in Southeast and I purposely moved back to the area I grew up in because that's where I wanted to live and I missed Days Market. And so I would ask them all the time and actually talk to the owner of Days Market and I'd ask people, okay, would you shop at a Days Market? Would you like that in your area? And you told me that you would love that. And I had one other person tell me they would love that. But every single other person I talked to said, no, I'd still go to Walmart. It's too expensive. So that was just interesting. I continually got that response. And we tried so hard to get Smiths to come. And they didn't want to come. And we couldn't get them to come because they had that same fear. They said, people are not going to shop here enough. They're not going to buy the fancy cheese. They're not going to come. And it's a continual battle. We don't do grocery stores. We don't do TJ Maxx's. We don't do restaurants. That's not what the council does. We're not in that business. But we try so hard to attract what we want and to get them to come in. There are in total 139 acres slated for commercial use on the west side. There are 12 plus acres in Broadview Shores. There's 70 acres in 2 regional commercial nodes that we have. There's 52 acres and 7 mixed use nodes that we have. And there's 5 acres at the Epic Sports Park. We just put an RFP out for that to try and get some commercial. We desperately want the commercial. Broadview Shores is one of the commercial for a long time. No one's wanted to come. You can't force commercial to come before it's ready. And that's just a frustration. One of the things that will help commercial come is this development. It is something else that will add income and add people and add rooftops. Another thing I want to address, you mentioned a nurse, your daughter's a nurse. We've actually met with, and Sarah Van Cleve has met with the school board and with Intermountain, the hospital. They both own a lot of land in Provo, and we taught them about land trusts and taught them about what they could do to do housing for their nurses, for their school teachers. So, we hope that they take advantage of that in the future. As far as affording the home, unfortunately, I'd say, in my opinion, if you have children, but most households are 2-income families, and they use both their incomes to apply for a mortgage and to approve of these homes. Their city employees are easily going to be able to be approved. We go off the area median income, and it is not the Provo specific area median income. It is the county specific area median income, which is 110,000. So, and we are looking at 80 to 120% of that AMI to qualify. And wetlands, sir, you mentioned who mentioned the wetlands?
Steve. It was Steve.
Yes, okay, it was you. Thankfully, we are not developing on the wetlands at all. We are leaving that open. So that will be undeveloped. We are not going to touch that. You're right that there's a lot of regulations that go with that, and we don't want to touch that, and we're leaving it open. Even better than that, they are putting a boardwalk trail across it. That is allowed. And so they will be doing that so that the people that live there can enjoy that trail and use that amenity. It's amenity, right? It's nature, it's pretty. So that will be a benefit of the area. I think Becky should speak to, you mentioned that the West Side hasn't had input. We have had huge committees with all West Side people. West Side people did put the plan together for the areas on the West Side. And I'll have Becky talk to that.
This is true. Maybe we should have Bill come up. We did have one North Lakeview neighborhood person on the general plan. She has been very, very involved for very, very many years. And then we did have committees. Everything that Bill has done has been through a committee. Even the change to the different things that have happened to the Southwest Area Plan or to any plan have been ran through resident committees, people that actually live on the west side of Provo. So we also have had a very robust public input phase. It's not that we just come up with something, an idea, and put it together. These are months, not just a month. These are months long discussions back and forth, and then it goes out for public input before it even comes to Planning Commission and the City Council. And these have gone out to the neighborhoods. The very first meeting that Beth put together for the West Side, there was an enormous amount of West Siders there. And that was before we even started the West Side Plan. So Bill, can you come up and can you explain a little bit of that?
Yeah, we kicked off the neighborhood effort with a meeting, I think at Sunset Elementary, and it was widely attended, probably 60 people there. From those 60 people, we created a steering committee of about a dozen. Tom Halliday, Wendy Newman, Aaron McCullough, Jonathan Hill were members of that committee, all West Side residents. In addition to working with that committee and going through a year-long process to develop a plan for the West Side, I personally surveyed most of the property owners that had owned 5 acres or more out there. And I say most because John Hinckley wouldn't meet with me. John just wanted to be left alone, which is why his property shows as agriculture on the plan. Okay. We went to great efforts to take public input. There were public hearings, or there were neighborhood meetings again after the planning effort, before it went to planning commission. Planning commission was a public hearing, city council was a public hearing. So there was tremendous effort in getting public input for the West Side plan. Yes.
What about the general plan? Because north of the river is part of the general plan. That also has significant.
Yeah, the West Side plan is referred to as the Southwest plan that goes from the river around to the I-15 freeway. During the rewrite of the general plan a couple of years ago, which was a completely new plan. It wasn't an update of the 2010 plan. It was a completely new plan. So that's everything north of the river was included in that new general plan. Again, public input was taken. There was a long public process for adopting the general plan. That was another probably 18-month process. Some of you were on the council when we went through all of that. So to me, I've heard people say, well, this is premature. This subdivision proposal is premature because there hasn't been a neighborhood plan for north of the river. I would agree with that if the general plan process hadn't been so exhaustive. We still need to do a neighborhood plan for north of the river. We will get around to that. But the general plan effort for north of the river was sufficient, or more than sufficient.
And the Broadview Shores, it's a pre-planned community, correct?
That went through an update 2 years before the
Yes.
general plan process went through.
This is all fairly new. This has all had a lot of public input, West Side input, West Side people on these committees. I know them personally. I have been to all of these meetings just about. And they are well attended. I know that some haven't heard of it until now, and that's a general thing that we get. Or, you know, we get a group of people that hear about something and maybe have a mission to change that. But these are all really, really well attended, really well public input, public comment. And like I said, even the general plan committee had West Side residents on it to help guide and steer it, right? We had Beth. Then wetlands. Wetlands is something that comes up on the west side a lot. Can you explain a little bit about that wetlands and how that works?
Well, we believe the wetlands have been delineated. We believe we're staying off what has been delineated. And you're just at the zone change stage. Now we have a subdivision process to go through. Public Works is going to make sure that we have followed any environmental regulations, any permits that we need have to be done as part of the subdivision process, or we can't get the subdivision approval. That's the next stage of the planning process. Then also on the question about, or Mr. Gale's comments about the desire for neighborhood commercial uses was spot on. He's right. We need neighborhood scale commercial on the west side. The project at Center in Geneva has up to 5 commercial pads on the Center Street frontage. Those are for neighborhood commercial uses. The developer who's doing that project has experience in other cities of that type of mixed use, horizontal mixed use, commercial next to residential, and filling those pads. We also have 10,000 square feet of commercial space on the opposite corner of Center and Geneva. That's the southwest corner I'm talking about.
Yes, we do.
Previously, I was talking about the northeast corner. Okay, so between those two, you've got over 20,000 square feet of commercial space that's been zoned for that already. The zoning is there. All we need is the interested business to go in. And I've asked economic development to try to target those kinds of businesses Mr. Gale suggested, to try to get them onto the site.
In fact, I remember a conversation we had once where we were talking about those neighborhood nodes along the Lakeview Parkway. And the concern was, gosh, what do we do? Because we have so much of it, even more than the west side can even absorb, right? If we developed it all, the businesses most likely would fail because we have so much of it on the west side. And so we had this discussion of what do we do? How do we make sure that this isn't a field forever? And we discussed having some mixed use nodes there so that we could have some options. So commercials could come in or commercial demanded to come in, because we're not in the business of that. That's not our business. What economic development does, how I understand it, is we kind of match things up. We don't have a book on the shelf that we can say, okay, Smiths, you're going here, right? What we do, can you explain a little bit what we do as economic development for the city, how we attract business and how that works?
Yeah, we actually go out and try to approach them and try to get them interested in the site. For example, in Southeast, when we approved a lot of multifamily housing on the west side of State Street, we created a map that showed all that additional housing. And then we took that to retailers. We approached the retailers and said, hey, does this now interest you? Now that we've got all this additional housing, does this help meet your threshold to get commercial here? And what we were really trying to do is get a neighborhood Walmart on the old Pioneer Drive-In where the offices building is going right now. We tried to get a neighborhood Walmart to go there because we thought that's the perfect scale for a store in that area. We just could not get them interested in it, even with us approaching them and trying to sell them on the site. Every retailer has very specific criteria in terms of rooftops, in terms of trip generation by the site, in terms of average median income. And they take all those factors into consideration before they decide to open a new store. It's expensive to open a new store. You don't do it willy-nilly.
Thanks, Bill. I think we've covered a lot, but what I do want to say that I don't think that my fellow council members have said, I've been very, very impressed with this council. We do listen. We do have a really hard job of trying to balance what needs to come and what we hear as desires and what can be reality and what is here today and what we have to do. But every single one of us listens to every email we get, every phone call we get, every conversation we get, and we try to address each one of those concerns. And we've had concerns about the schools. I personally have had long conversations with the school board and the superintendent about the schools and about what this development means. And they feel that everything's okay with this development, that there's no need for extra parking. There's no need for extra parking in the future. There's no need for, they have no interest in purchasing the site. I've had long conversations about food trucks, right? All these different things that we have all taken very, very seriously. And before we make a decision, we really do investigate what's going on. We really do listen, and we really do try to figure out what's best for every part of the city. The Lakeview Parkway I'm really excited about because Geneva Road is not under our control. It's under state control, and we have no control over that. But once Orem can finish that portion of Geneva Road, that gives us an extra access. And yes, I do hear all the time, oh, that's too far west. Nobody's going to use it. But it's kind of like the conversation we had today about the trains blocking the tracks and people taking Center Street. I really think once it's opened, that amenity will be there, and I think it will be used. And it'll be another way to get north-south on the west side of Provo. It'll also be a way that we can safely ride the bikes with the trails that are going to go all the way up there. It provides opportunities that West Provo, because, you know, we are developed. We've got a lake, especially the northern parts. It's more of the development is in the south, right? South of the river. It just gives us those extra opportunities on the west that we can travel that way. There's a lot of constraints because we're not UDOT and the state does own, you know, a lot. You have to ask the state, and there's a lot of money to go east-west connectivity under or over the freeway. But these are solutions that staff has found, and it's not just built for people in the county. It's actually built for West Side residents, and I think it'll be a great amenity once it's completed.
Thank you, Councillor Bogdan. And Councillor McKay?
I think he left, but there was a gentleman here who talked about the airport and the sports complex. Two interesting facts about Provo. We have the lowest income in the state, so our income as a city is the lowest, and we also are a city that is around 52% nonprofit, meaning they don't pay property taxes. Those are very interesting statistics. And those statistics really affect if a company, grocery store, business wants to come here. Where's Kroger's headquarters? You've been there, Mayor? Midwest somewhere. Okay, they're in Oklahoma. So in a boardroom in Oklahoma, they look at our stats and they're not good. They're not good. They don't want to come here based on our stats. Springville looks better. Orem looks better. Every city around us looks better statistically. It's probably one of the reasons why we have so many local companies, right? Because the local people know that there's value there, but it doesn't look good on a spreadsheet. We had to get creative. We can't bring the businesses we want to come here and attract that sales tax that we want to attract as high as we want to attract it. So we've had to make some of our own economic developers. The sports complex is one of those things. The airport is one of those things. And they help keep your taxes lower. They help bring revenue to the city. They help keep your businesses stronger if any of you are business owners. In a weekend, when we have a huge sports tournament at the sports park, that can bring in $2-3 million. I mean, it's a huge revenue generator, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger, especially once it's finished and it's the largest one in the state. But you know, BYU attracts people on the east side. The sports complex will attract people on the west side. We have to have these economic generators to make our city work well. But I just want to bring up those points.
Thank you, Councillor McKay. I wish we could have got Buc-ee's.
I've never been, but you know I like my snacks.
Bill, could you speak to demand for the 34 units of workforce housing? Matt shared with us earlier his project in Weber County, which was much larger. And I know this is just based on your opinion at this point, because there hasn't been any official process identified yet.
Well, I've got 39 city employees on a waiting list.
Oh my.
We haven't started pre-qualifying them yet, but as this is now getting ready to come to you, I've been getting more and more emails every day saying, when can I start talking to somebody about pre-qualifying?
Wow.
What's the next step? When's the house going to be ready?
First responders and public
yes.
employees.
Most are, I can show you the list if you want to see it, but most are first responders, yes. But other city employees too.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Other questions or discussion, comments from council members? Councilor Whipple.
Yeah, I had a question about the size of these detached single-family homes. One of the comments was talking about there are some homes for sale in Provo for $400,000, $500,000. When I've looked at those listings, because the daughter, I'd love for her to be able to get into a house. The ones that have been in that price range have either been very old homes, like 2 or 3 bedroom with 1 bath, or they've been under 1,000 square feet, or they are townhomes or mobile homes in a park. What is the size of these homes that we'd be getting for this price?
So we have 2 categories of home. We have the market rate homes that will be 1,500 to 1,700, maybe at the most. The affordable homes, or I'm sorry, the workforce homes, we're looking at maybe 1,500 at the max, and we're really trying to push the envelope on how small we go. We're trying to create a product that eventually can be afforded by one income, and so the range on how low it goes may go into 1,000, maybe even 900.
For these homes, would they have attached garages?
They will all at least have 1 attached garage.
Does that count in the square footage of the home?
No.
Okay, because the ones in like the Central Pioneer neighborhoods do not have any garages, so they're smaller.
Right.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay. I'll call for a vote then on this implied motion. Councillor Hoban?
Yes. Yes.
Councillor Whipple?
Yes.
Councillor Garrett? Yes. Councillor McKay?
Yes.
Counselor Christensen,
Yes.
Counselor Hanley,
Yes.
Counselor Bogdan.
Yes.
This implied motion passes by a vote of 7-0. Thank you. Thank you again, Bill and Matt. And to all the residents who came to provide us with your input, thank you. Next, we'll move to an implied motion on a resolution accepting an annexation petition for further consideration for approximately 2.13 acres of property located at 5490 North Canyon Road. This will be presented by our city planner, Jessica Donachie.
Yes, thank you. I'll try to make this a little bit quick. I know our items have been very thoroughly discussed. Kevin, if you want to pull up the GIS or plat map. This is for two properties in the northeast by the mouth of the canyon, approximately 2 acres as it states there. There are 2 residential properties currently, or 2 single-family homes, 1 on each lot. This is just south of the larger annexation. That is the next item. And here we go. Yes, that is the one. So these are the 2 single-family. That's the larger annex. There we go. Okay. So these are the 2 single-family annex properties that are being considered for annexation. This is again the resolution to accept the petition. There's no additional development plans for these properties. It's just annexing in these 2 single-family dwellings on a separate petition from the larger annexation. Do you have any questions?
Counselor Bogdan.
I'm just curious because we're seeing quite a bit of Northeast wanting to access in. Do we know what the motivation is for wanting to come into the city?
The applicant is here and can answer more to that question, but I believe it's just wanting to annex into the city, to be a part, to have access to first responder, like fire, police, it can also have impact on taxes. But that's the main reason, yeah.
Because item number 7 is also an annexation for Canyon Road as well, right?
Yes, that is a much larger annexation, and that one will be brought back with a rezone and eventual development.
Okay,
plans.
so that one's a development plan. The other one is
This
just
is just bringing
just
in-
desire to
Yeah.
come into the city. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Jessica? Counselor Whipple?
Is there any reason from a public works perspective why we should not do this?
No, we've had this run through our public works department. They raised no concerns for
Okay.
this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. If the applicant is here and would care to make any comment, they're welcome to do so at this time.
My
Hello.
name's Sandy White. Our house and the Hall's house were built in 1974. We've been in the county all these years. We've seen the Gillespie Waring Waterhouse on the west side of my property is now in the city. Our neighbor on the other side of Hall's is now in the city. My north boundary is the Indian Rose Trailhead Road. Everything's in the city, but these 2 houses. That's why we're entering. It's either do it now or have you annex us. So we did it on our own.
Thank you, Sandy. Any questions for Sandy? This item is available for public comment. If there are any here who would wish to speak to this item, you can approach the podium.
I'm Scott Smith. I live adjacent to the Whites and the Halls. And I just like to comment, I believe the same reasons applicable it was mentioned about, by Jessica for, the police response time. There's other reasons because that's the future. If you're going to do anything with the property, we annexed farm property. It was the city and us. How many acres was it? We had 5, the city had 5. I think it was about 10 2 years ago. And this was all part of our family. The Halls are my sister's kids. Lisa's my sister's daughter. And I think that what the question came up about utilities, it's probably just like it is. There's no improvements there yet. And they'd like to have that little piece of paradise, the Whites and the Halls, to farm. And there's reasons to go in the city. We've experienced a good one anyway, as neighbors, and they would be a great addition to the city anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Anyone else? If not, we'll close public comment and bring the item back to council for discussion. Comments or questions, councilors? Councilor Christensen? No, okay. If not, I'll call for a vote. Councilor Whipple?
Yes.
Councilor Garrett? Yes. Councilor McKay?
Yes.
Councilor Christensen?
Yes.
Councilor Hanley?
Yes.
Councilor Bogdan?
Yes.
And Councilor Hoban?
Yes.
Thank you. This motion passes by a vote of 7-0. Next, we have a resolution accepting an annexation petition for further consideration for approximately 144.98 acres of property located at 5078 North Canyon Road. This will be presented also by Jessica Danicky.
Thank you. You've seen a lot of me today, so apologies. This is the annexation for the area directly adjacent to the Whitehall annexation. When they originally came in, they originally started talking to the city in late 2023. When they first submitted an application for annexation, it was somewhere in the 70-acre realm. They have since worked tirelessly to work with the neighboring communities to see who wanted to come in on this petition. So it has grown into a very large petition, including quite a number of residential properties. Again, this is just the first step as a resolution to accept the petition. There is an intention for development. They will come back with, we're finishing up an annexation agreement to come with this annexation. And then they will also come back with concept plan, project plan for development. So at this point, we are just considering the resolution for the petition. And you will see a lot more information regarding this property coming back to you in the future. And the applicant is also here to answer any questions that you may have. But are there any questions for me?
Councilor Bogdan?
So for this one, are there any public works concerns? Is that what I'm hearing is a condition?
That has been addressed in the annexation agreement. Once that's finalized, we'll also bring that to you when we have that language finalized. The applicant has worked tirelessly with Public Works. I've personally sat in on like 5 meetings with them in Public Works to discuss how to provide utilities, specifically water pressure being one of the big concerns to this area. So they have been working with Public Works. They're aware of future development concerns, and they've already worked for solutions to mitigate those.
Thank you.
Other questions for Jessica? Councilor Christensen?
I was wondering not so much water pressure, but just sewer. We went through a whole gravel pit discussion that's very close to this as well. And the city thought it was fine until it wasn't. And then, we had to stop. Can you just talk a little bit about how this would impact sewer?
I can't speak to that personally. I can ask the applicant to come up to address more of those. But again, I can just reiterate that they have been with Public Works every step of the way. So, but yes, you'd like to come up to address some of those questions regarding sewer capacity.
Thank you, Jessica.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Zach Hartman with Land Advisors. I represent the lender that foreclosed on the big portion of his property. And I'm just kind of, we take projects through, and this was kind of interesting. When we first started working with Public Works a long time ago. I remember walking out of the meeting and my engineer, Nate Reeve, looks at me and he says, Zach, we're going to have to be the good guy to get this done. And I was like, oh, sounds expensive. And then we kind of worked through it, and it's been a sitcom, but it's been an enjoyable sitcom. And as we met each neighbor, and Jessica kind of bullied me, she made me work with every neighbor so that she would be comfortable, and Aaron and Bill. And so it was a lot of fun. And we got everybody to agree to the annexation, and we really liked the general plan you guys have over this area, and our plan will match that. It will be a good steward, will be a good neighbor. And to answer your question on sewer, we're pretty comfortable with the sewer capacity and what we've been told, and with capacities and how the site will drain. That is part of the requirement of why we had to work with some of the neighbors, mainly because we needed it to circulate and do what we want through the project. And we're going to have to do this kind of all at once with one big heavy lift. And to give you an example, so I represent the lender. We're not here for profit. We're here to lose less, right? And we're just on our way out. We already have the property under contract to be purchased by a qualified buyer. The buyer is part of this process, so you shouldn't see any change between seller and buyer and the person that executes the construction all the way to the finished homes.
So, sorry to be a stickler on this.
Sure.
But everything seemed great. We were talking about their gravel pit as well.
I'm not the same person.
No,
I'm a whole
I'm
new
not
Phoenix
saying you are. I'm not
of
saying it was even the developer. I'm just saying it was a significant issue about the sewage. It had nothing to do with the developer.
Yep.
I'm wondering from the city. Yes, Jessica, I'm looking at you, if there's anyone who can address that, because we got a long way with that developer, and then airbagged because we couldn't provide sewer. I'm just wondering what's changed.
Sewer is not my expertise. Engineering, much to my dad's disappointment, I did not follow his steps into becoming an engineer.
It's not too late.
Yeah. What I can say is, like Zach has said, they have been working hand in hand with Public Works. And this is just a resolution to bring the property in. They will have to come back with an application, with a project plan, to show that they are providing capacity. So we might not have the exact fine details worked out here where they know the diameter of each sewer lateral that they're going to be putting in. But they've worked with Public Works enough, and Public Works has been behind this annexation. I know Gordon has been a big proponent of it. So Public Works has enough confidence that the development is feasible, that they want to see the annexation move forward. And more detail will come as each development phase moves forward and the project is more, more firm in its plan. And we know exactly what we need to see. Public Works will not hesitate in asking for what we need to make sure that capacity is there to provide for the needs of future development.
And I
Chair?
texted my engineer for a technical answer to see if I could give it to you, and he hasn't answered yet, but.
Yeah, again, I know that this isn't to approve it and things like that. I'm just bringing it up because it was a significant issue. And I'm very curious, as I'm sure others are, to just find out, so what's different so that you can move forward. So I'm not pushing against the project. I just think we need to answer those questions.
Thank you.
Chair Garrett, can I just interject as well?
Yes.
This resolution is just to consider the annexation for further consideration. It's not approving the annexation tonight. After, if it's approved, all of the various departments will be more involved in the process. And as Jessica said, the development will come later after the land is annexed. But tonight it's just to consider it. We say, yeah, we'll go down the road to see what we can do with this land, or absolutely not. We're not going to consider it at all.
And then we'll have opportunities to be with Public Works and others to question them. Thank you, Heidi. Counselor Handley.
Yeah, I don't want to try to adjudicate the question of the development right now, obviously, but on the other hand, I guess my question is if the answer from the public and from the council was we don't want development here, does that change your desire to be annexed? I mean, how dependent are you on that success?
I don't really have a choice one or the other. I think if I was a cute developer, I would have like tried to annex into the county and done some little funny maneuver. We kind of moved forward in good faith. We saw actually came to the meeting where you guys approved the Northeast plan. And we saw behind that as we put money and resources into kind of following your general plan. And we felt like there were neighbors that we could assist along the way, and we kind of enjoyed the process. So I think we want to annex in regardless of our treatment. And I think we'll go forward with that, and we'll just kind of deal with the consequences that come from coming into Provo. Because so far, just by watching how you guys have handled this evening and how you've treated everybody, we're pretty excited to be part of Provo. And just so you know, like Jed Nilsson and I have been best friends since we were 2 years old. And so you want to know somebody that's just as passionate about something. And Jed is really good at delivering things, but we're both kind of intense humans, right? And so this is going to be fun. And I think if you look at the notes from the community development meeting we had a lot of support. And we actually made some modifications to the plan that we submitted to staff based on the feedback we got. And I actually think you're going to want us.
Okay. Thank you. Part of the reason I asked the question is because, much of the area to the north, and I think some of this area at one point was considered for a pretty massive development that I'm sure you're familiar with. And so, and the public was very opposed. And we developed, new regulations for foothill developments, and the Northeast Plan was part of that. So I just want to personally make sure
my client has lost enough money. We're going to sell this and get out of here.
Okay.
We're going to hand it off to a qualified developer that's going to build the houses, and we're going to put together a good project. And then as far as going to the other side of the hill, in the community meeting, we asked about the city's property that's there. We just said, how do you want us to address it? Want to make sure you have roadways that connect to it and other things, or how do you want us to handle that?
So do you need to have the annexation in order to sell off the property? Is that to a new developer?
No.
I'm not sure I understood what you just said.
Oh, so two things. You were saying there was a larger project prior to us,
Yeah.
right? I'm saying in our discussion with staff and in our discussion with the community, City of Provo actually owns the land to the north that adjacent touches our property. We just asked as a good neighbor, do you want a road that connects to that? Do you want us to build a water tank that matches your guys' future needs? What are your future needs? I wasn't trying to get off course, but basically we were saying our goals are this site. What you've got here is what we're going to do, right? And then if you look at our application, there's a lot of families in here that won't be part of the development because they want to keep their current property as is, but they want to be in the city. And then there's other family members that have parcels that don't connect right and don't have access. And we've kind of created a development plan that answers a lot of those questions. Our property has access as it sits with our own ownership. So.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, Zach.
Sure.
This item is now open for public comment. If there are any here who would like to make a comment, you can approach the podium at this time.
Looking at the map that's up here, and I'm wondering if we have a laser pointer, or if that, I want to make a point, maybe we can do it without that.
We do have a laser
These
pointer.
guys border me for almost a mile on the upper property. I'm the adjacent property owner. And oh, it goes that way. Okay, let's not get blinded.
Put your eye out. Screen that way. It's going to point at that screen.
And he's losing time on his clock, so make sure he doesn't lose it.
There you go. That's the point.
Oh, you got to hold it down. Okay. Okay, this is our property line with these guys here. All the way to right there. And down below, I've added that up. My math might be off by a couple of %, but it's about 4,500 feet. So I have borderline with this development. And I would say from Zach, who just addressed you, and Reza, and then Nate Brockbank, you couldn't have the people that they brought on site and answer questions about what kind of houses, what kind of development. The question comes up about the neighborhood. We haven't had anybody like these guys in a long time looking at that property. And everything I know about them, everything that what they've offered us as neighbors, and do we want to join in the annexation? And there's some cousins back here that are doing it on the west side, right by Canyon Road, right here. They're going to be part of that. They've gone to every one of those neighbors individually, and I guess maybe what I'm thinking, I should say it, the previous developer wasn't like that. And these guys are taking everything the neighbors want into account and what the zoning might be and how this would affect us. You know, probably all of you voted on our annexation down below. We're white.
Thank you, Scott. You can have 30 more seconds.
Okay. All I want to say is I like everything I've heard from them.
Okay.
And if some of this can be talked about, you're going to get the same flavor I've got with these folks. I think they're for real, and they'll put something that'll be a genuine improvement on that property. There's a big vacuum there. I'd like to see homes on. That's kind of strange coming from a girl, but you got to be there 24/7
Thank you.
in the early hours of the morning and so forth. Anyway, I'm in favor of what they're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Others?
Hi, Sharon Mehmet, and I understood I needed to be here because this came to our District 1 meeting. But I appreciate Heidi explaining the process because I didn't realize we were still in that early stage process on this one also. So a couple questions just as we went through. We did hear it, as I said in our neighborhood meeting. Many people were in favor. I don't think we explained in that neighborhood meeting that we were that early in this process. But we would like to, I'd be curious if the developers looked at what he can currently do in the county, because I think it's actually more than, well, it's for sure more than the OSPR he would come in as, that I understood. And to Councilor Christensen's comment, I think that the gravel pit became an issue because of the number of units per acre, and that currently they think they have enough, and the city will have to correct me if I'm wrong. They currently have enough for RA if we built everything that's allowed in RA, but that's not what we're going for here. So you're right. But he did mention hundreds of homes going in. So, but hundreds of acres too. So maybe it equals out. Those are mostly our comments is that as you go forward, I think we're all kind of interested to see what the process will bring, what he's proposing. We did all have problems with the first developer. We're glad he's not here anymore. And so I'd be curious to see what this process brings. But I'm also concerned as I listen to the developer say he's underdeveloped, because of course we want it to stay as much open space as we can in that area. So that's what I've heard from my neighbors. We'd be curious to watch the process. So as it comes in, and again, as this comes to a public meeting again, if I understand the process correctly, when you actually approve the zoning, the annexation, that will come in as OSPR, and then we'll have another meeting, and that would be my request that we maintain those separate meetings for the zone change from OSPR to whatever. And I would request to the developer that he not make it one huge zone change, because that was a comment that was also made at the neighborhood meeting, that the 177 come in as one cool new zone. that it come in as something a little closer to what we already have in our code. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Hello, I'm Ginny Smith. I live 5440 North Canyon Road. My comment about this is I was on the neighborhood plan for this area, and the things that kept coming back from our neighbors that were important was that they wanted a reasonable and respectful residential neighborhood that fit the beautiful area and the hillsides, respectful of the environment. They were concerned about access to the public lands and the trails, that kind of thing. They wanted I don't know what the right word is, but they're concerned about Canyon Road. And that's going to have to be addressed. And that they wanted to make sure we had infrastructure there that would go into the future and access to that beautiful 39 acres beyond our property or beyond the property there. And even though we're early in that process, the conversations that are happening and the plans that we made fit that. And so having this annexation affects whoever's going to build houses there or live there, but also affects our farm. And oh, that was the other one. They wanted the agriculture, respect for the agriculture that's there. And so these are the things that I think that are being considered, that are being talked about. And I think that if this continues, the things that our neighbors are interested in and the things that longtime residents are interested in keeping some of our neighborhood community spirit or personality would be present. So I approve of, I encourage you to approve of this so that we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ginny. Anyone else? If not, we'll close public comment and invite the council to any discussion or comments or questions. If not, we'll call for a vote. Councillor McKay?
Yes.
Councillor Christensen?
Yes.
Councillor Handley?
Yes.
Councillor Bogdan?
Yes.
Councillor Hoban is excused. Councillor Whipple?
Yes.
And Councillor Garrett? Yes. That resolution passes by a vote of 6-0 with Councillor Hoban excused. Next, we have an ordinance amending the zone map classification of property generally located at 2858 West Center Street from the agriculture A1 zone to the one family residential R17 zone. This is in the Fort Union neighborhood and will be presented by our planning supervisor, Aaron Ardmore.
Okay, thank you, City Council. We have the request here in front of us. So to give you an idea where that property is and what the zoning is around it, it's highlighted there in red. So this is one of the remnants of the agricultural zone on properties that don't necessarily meet that zone anymore. So they are hoping to rezone the property to a zone that would allow them to subdivide. As we spoke about earlier today, they would be keeping the home in the middle there. If you can see in the aerial, there's that tan roof. That would be staying on lot 2. And then they have 3 new building lots on lot 1, 3, and 4. Lots 1, 3, and 4 would also be accessed only off of 2830 West and not Center Street. That access that currently exists on Center Street for the lot 2 home would be maintained. And they'd have access easement for that lot and for the lot to the west of them that would stay in the agricultural zoning. That might be enough. We support this rezone. The Planning Commission supports the rezone. The applicants are here behind me if you had any additional questions.
Thank you, Aaron. Questions for Aaron? If the applicant would like to make a comment, we would invite them up at this time to make any comment or respond to questions.
I'm Kevin Peterson, Benchmark Engineering Land Surveying. The applicant here is Rocky, and we don't really have any comments, but we're prepared to answer any questions if you have some.
Thank you, Kevin. Any questions for the applicant or? Yes, Counselor Bogdan.
I just have a quick question, just because it was brought up in Planning Commission. Have you asked any of those properties around you if they wanted to come in with for a zone change with it?
No.
Okay. I was just curious because that was a big discussion with
Yeah.
Planning Commission.
Yeah, we wasn't aware that that was maybe even a consideration. It was, Rocky recently purchased the property. The
Okay.
first thing we did was have a CRC meeting, and we had a lot of support. There was a lot of good advice, and we applied it, you know, in every case, and learned a few things along the way, and you know, it's one of these properties that if you look around at the other properties that are zoned R1.10 are actually smaller lots than what we've got. Each one of these lots actually meet the 10,000 square foot threshold. And the only reason for the zoning change that we're asking is because of the frontage.
Right.
Puts us slightly smaller, and with the existing home and 10-foot offsets, it was just the best that we could come up with. And the staff agreed with this, so.
Out of curiosity, are these going to be owner occupied or rented or?
Presently, he's living in the home that he just purchased, and he's a builder.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, this is where he plans on staying, and it's not one of these quick cash grabs and out of there. He's going to build something that he wants to live around for a long time. So.
Okay. And rent out, Rocky, are you going to rent out the others, or are they going to just all be for sale units or?
Sorry, what was that?
What's the plans for the other units? Are they going to go for sale? Are they going to go for rent? Are they going to?
Well, currently, myself, my mom, and my grandma, we live in the second lot. The first lot, we might develop that ourselves. The other two lots, we might already have a potential developer for those two.
Building, yeah.
For sale or for rent or?
We're selling the other two.
You're selling the other two?
Yeah.
Personally, I think it looks like a good development. It's a good way to, and it gets everything off of Center Street off to the side.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Any
the
other
access-
questions for the applicant? Thank you, Rocky and Kevin.
Okay.
We'll open this item for public comment. If there's anyone here who would like to make a comment, you can approach the podium. If not, we'll close public comment and bring the item back to council for discussion. Any discussion, councilors, or questions?
How big's the lot? I missed that.
How big is the piece of the
Yeah.
parcel of land?
Currently it's 1.04 acres.
Okay.
And he said approximately 10,000 square feet per lot.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I'll call for a vote on this implied motion. Counselor Christensen?
Yes.
Counselor Hanley?
Yes.
Counselor Bogdan?
Yes.
Counselor Hoban?
Yes.
Counselor Whipple?
Yes.
Counselor Garrett? Yes. Counselor McKay?
Yes.
This motion passes by a vote of 7-0. Thank you. The next item is an ordinance amending Provo City Code Title 14 to remove data centers as permitted or conditional uses. And this will be presented by our city planner, Hannah Saltz.
Hello, the council has been through this several times, but I don't know how many members of the public have, so I'll try to keep it brief, but I apologize if I leave anything out. This is a cleanup item in preparation for creating a data center overlay zone that would allow for more targeted application. All good. There we go. Right, currently it's permitted, or data centers are permitted as conditional or outright permitted uses in 19 zones with no additional requirements beyond the zone. The overlay zone would be allowed only in the M1 and PC zones shown on the right. not in any of the 17 zones, plus all of the R1 and R2, surprisingly, shown on the left with more strict standards. Do you have any questions about this item before the next one?
Any questions for Hannah on this ordinance? Thank you, Hannah. We're going to open this for public comment in case there's anyone who would like to make a comment. Seeing none, we'll close public comment and invite council discussion. If not, we'll call for a vote. Councillor Handley.
Yes.
Councillor Bogdan.
Yes.
Councillor Hoban.
Yes.
Councillor Whipple.
Yes.
Councillor Garrett, yes. Councillor McKay.
Yes.
And Councillor Christensen.
Yes.
Thank you. That item passes by a vote of 7-0. Lastly, Hannah, welcome back to the podium. We have an ordinance enacting Provo City Code Chapter 14.34A to create a data center overlay zone.
Right. This is the fun part, actually creating what the new standards will be. This overlay zone, and again, I apologize for the overset text, just a different system. Again, could be applied only in some zones. It would have to go through, every data center application would have to go through the full rezone process with a full public hearing, as well as the Council and Planning Commission meetings. These standards do not set absolute quantifiable numeric standards for data centers in most cases, simply because those don't exist. There's a wide variety of ways data centers can be run. There are some trade-offs discussed in the staff report, but that ambiguity also gives the council leeway to say when something is enough or not. So instead of focusing on quantitative absolutes, the standard focuses on requiring applicants to show the work that they're doing, and also common industry standards that they're not using to help the council make an informed decision. There's also a provision in the ordinance requiring data centers over 5 megawatt hours to pay for a consultant fee for an expert to evaluate this, to fill in gaps in staff and elected official knowledge. This rezone process would trigger the evaluation of several other policies already in the works, especially UNPAs and the council offices. There are 6 major areas of concerns that this policy addresses, as well as one, other catch-all category where we tried to add some social benefit and pull in more of the council's policies. I am happy to leave this page here so that people can skim and look through it, but do you have any questions about this part before I get to, there was one point raised by the Planning Commission that I wanted to get to with the definitions. Do you have any questions on the content before I move to just the definition?
Councillor Handley.
Yeah, just to clarify, we did, so water use, we clarified, would also indicate wastewater, conservation as well as contamination, right?
Yes, contamination mitigation strategies also have to be shown.
Yeah. Councillor Bogdan.
I just want the public to know that we have gone through this at length. This is the second time we've seen it, and then we went through it quite a bit this afternoon. So it's not like we're just willy-nilly just passing things. We really have dug into this.
This has been a process of months. I've collaborated with several industry experts, including people seeking to build a data center here. We've run it through them to make sure this was viable in the industry. I also reached out to some other computing experts. I reached out to BYU today to satisfy some of the concerns of the council, spoke with their legal team, a computer professor, and some people in facilities management. As the definition stands, they have no concerns, and they understand that if they do decide to build a larger data center facility and have any concerns or any conflicts with the restrictions of their zone, they can seek an ordinance text amendment, and we'd happily walk them through the process and facilitate all of that.
Sorry, Councillor Garrett, if I could just ask one other question. So I forgot to ask this earlier, so I apologize, Hannah. The energy use where it says encourages renewable sources, I was having some conversations about this myself with a mechanical engineering professor who specializes in energy, and I was asking him, about data centers and so on. He confirmed what you've been saying all along, is that finding standards on this is very, very difficult because it's a moving target. But in the course of the conversation, and I just pass this along to the rest of the council since you'll be around for when and if a decision is considered for this sort of thing. it occurred to me, and maybe that's what we mean by this bullet point, that we, even though the only conversation we've had with anybody at this point is about natural gas, and my colleague explained to me why that's the case, and that was a very interesting conversation. But it's not entirely clear that we couldn't ask for a portfolio, right? If they're self-generating, we can still ask for multiple energy sources. We could ask for compensations to I don't know. I just think we should be very creative and aggressive and ask for, if and when we get to a point where we're considering a proposal, and I hope actually that it takes 5 to 10 years, because I'm confident that we're too early at this point. But just, I thought it was interesting that he was suggesting that that's a possibility, right? That there might be ways to ask for more than what they might be offering if they come and say, well, we're going to do 100% natural gas because that's the baseline, but it doesn't all have to be baseline. At least that's what I understood. Anyway, I just thought I'd pass that along. Is that kind of what we think we mean with that bullet point?
At this point, and I did confirm with Utah Clean Energy and other sources on this, Utah state law effectively does require 100% battery backups for any non-continuous renewable energy, something like solar panels that only generate for a few hours a day. That is an incredibly expensive system to set up.
I see.
So it's not prohibiting clean energy or renewables in any way, but the effect is that it's so cost prohibitive that no one's going to actually do it.
But is it like, we had on a discussion years ago, Facebook was looking at helping us out with our solar farm and then laying claim to the credits. Why can't a data center do something similar to say, we're going to generate our energy here with natural gas, but we'll help you build a solar farm? I don't know. If they really want it and we don't like what they're offering, we can ask for more.
There are options for those to be voluntary donations. There are clean energy tariffs where you take a portion or tax them an excessive portion of the energy that you sell them and then earmark that for renewable reinvestments. That all would be done through Provo Power and UMPA. And Scott is here to speak about the Provo Power side. We, given the moratorium running out on October 3rd on this, would encourage passing it as it is. But if the council wants us to explore additional renewable energy options or reinvestment options, if it's not possible for on-site, that's something we could also do.
Well, it seems to me that encourages, I know we're talking very high level abstractions on purpose, and it seems like encourages renewable sources, gets at that. I just, I'd love to develop some strategies along the way, or as a proposal comes to us, to think big in terms of long-term benefits that they might be able to get.
Yeah, hopefully shifting in state and federal policies, progression of renewable sources and different options would make this more viable in the future. So you're right, it is intentionally vague now in the hope that it becomes more viable. But yeah, we can definitely continue to keep our eye on options.
Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you.
We'd like to open this item for public comment if there is anyone here who would like to make a comment. If not, we'll close. Yes, okay.
Not really a comment, more of a question. You guys have been studying this a lot. I was just curious how you came up with the location for that restricted zone overlay zone.
And your name again is David?
David. Oh yeah, sorry. Still David.
Thank you, David. We may have opportunity to address that during our discussion. Thank you. Any other public comment? We'll close public comment then and bring the item back to council for discussion. Yes, Councilor Bogdan.
So David, Hannah right there has all the information, and I'm sure she'd be happy to meet with you at some point in time. She's probably wanting to get home to her baby now, but she can probably give you some information, some contact information to have a conversation. But yeah, that's all.
Other councilor comments or questions? I'll call for a vote. Counselor Bogdan,
Yes.
Counselor Hoban,
Yes.
Counselor Whipple,
Yes.
Counselor Garrett, yes. Counselor McKay,
Yes.
Counselor Christensen,
Yes.
and Counselor Hanley.
Yes.
This motion passes by a vote of 7-0. Thank you. If there's no objection, we'll now adjourn the Provo Municipal Council by unanimous consent.
Recording stopped.